Chapter 161. On the western bank of the 10,000 Demons Pond stood a boy no older than 8, clutching a Yumeng mushroom to his chest. His eyes darted back and forth, every muscle in his small frame taut with vigilance. In this ancient, treacherous battlefield, his youth seemed incongruous, yet none of the seasoned cultivators nearby looked down on him. This boy was Ye Cheng. Moments after crossing into the arena, he had followed the faint resonance of his birth sword talisman to reunite with his sister, Xianxia. Together, their power was nothing short of extraordinary. Ye Cheng's cultivation had already reached the peak of the Heavenly King realm, his combat prowess rivaling that of many Divine King practitioners. Xianxia, having ascended to the Divine King realm, wielded her thunder magic with absolute mastery, capable of striking down even those who had reached the Emperor realm. With such formidable strength at their disposal, the siblings' progress through the ancient battlefield had grown steadily smoother. Side by side, they readied themselves for whatever challenges the 10,000 Demons Pond would hurl their way. Not long ago, the two young brothers had ventured to the outskirts of the 10,000 Demons Pond, and to their astonishment discovered a rare Yumeng mushroom. A formidable Yuyun beast, said to have perfected the Xuanhuang realm, stood guard over it. Yet even such overwhelming power proved no match for Xianxia. After a brutal clash, the creature fled in terror. But Xianxia was far from satisfied. Deep within every Yuyun beast lies a Yuyun demon pill that resonates with the essence of a mature Yumeng mushroom. When consumed together, they unleash a tremendous surge of strength, and if you refine the pill and the mushroom in unison, their combined potency exceeds that of the mushroom alone by more than tenfold. Determined to claim both treasures, Xianxia set off in pursuit, intent on slaying the beast and retrieving the precious demon pill. Meanwhile, Ye Cheng remained behind, eyes never leaving the magnificent fungus he'd helped uncover. Youthful and earnest, he had failed to anticipate one thing: the aftermath of their battle would draw all manner of opportunists. Sure enough, within moments a small crowd of cultivators had gathered, their eyes gleaming with greed as they assessed the lone young guardian and the rare prize he protected. A chill ran down Ye Cheng's spine. He was vastly outnumbered, and the real test had only just begun. Ye Cheng's heart pounded as he took in his surroundings. This place was nothing like the Xuanhuang secret realm. All around him stood cultivators at the God King level, and higher still, heavenly kings paced nearby. If he hesitated much longer, he might even draw the attention of an emperor-level expert. If his sister were here, Ye Cheng wouldn't have felt so uncertain. But alone, just a boy of 8 or 9, he couldn't help a flicker of nervousness. He tightened his grip on the natal sword talisman his father had left him. That priceless artifact, forged from his father's very essence and blood, was his ultimate trump card, but it was finite, and Ye Cheng was loath to waste it. "Hey, little one," called a harsh voice. A circle of robed monks had formed around him, their eyes fixed greedily on the Yumeng mushroom he clutched. "You scared? Hand over the Yumeng mushroom right now." "Quickly, boy," another monk barked. "Set it down, and don't even think of damaging it. One wrong move, and your life's forfeit. Got it?" They didn't even bother to hide their contempt. To them, Ye Cheng was no more than a child. Even if he possessed some secret skill, how much of a threat could he really be? Yet Ye Cheng steeled himself. His sister wasn't here to bail him out, but he still had his wits, and that talisman. He decided he would not give in. Not now, not ever. With a steadying breath, he prepared to face whatever those monks might throw at him. Ye Cheng's jaw clenched as the monks' threats echoed through the clearing. "That Yumeng mushroom was claimed by my sister and me," he said, voice low but steady. "We fought tooth and nail with a Yuyun beast to get it. If you think you can just steal it now, you've got another thing coming." He fixed them with a cold stare. "My sister will be back any minute. You do well to leave now, and save yourselves the regret." "Regret?" One of the monks laughed loud and hard, a harsh sound that set the others snickering. They closed the ring around Ye Cheng, eyes gleaming with contempt. "You and your sister?" another taunted. "Don't make us laugh. You've barely scratched a Yuyun beast, let alone bested one. What makes you think you can boss us around?" From the shadowy edge of the trees, Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling watched in silence, their weapons loose at their sides, but their gazes sharp as they took in the tense standoff. Sheng Jiling's expression wavered with uncertainty as she glanced between Ye Cheng and Nalan Qingyuan. "Qingyuan," she asked, voice edged with disbelief. "What do you mean when you say these people are plagued by misfortune?" Sheng Jiling's mind raced. Ye Cheng was clearly cornered. How could he possibly turn the tables? Before she could answer, Nalan Qingyuan's tone dropped to a low murmur. "Do you recall those two unmatched prodigies I mentioned from my travels in Qianyu?" A tremor ran through Sheng Jiling, and her eyes widened. "You mean the brother and sister?" "No, surely you don't mean him?" Nalan Qingyuan drew a steady breath, then met Sheng Jiling's gaze with a firm nod. She remembered all too well standing beside the Black Dragon Pond that fateful day. She'd watched Ye Cheng himself square off against a pure-blooded Xuanjiao of the God King realm, and seen his sister utterly crush another pure-blooded God King Xuanjiao with a single, devastating blow. That was no ordinary pair of cultivators. They were the two peerless little monsters who had left even the toughest opponents reeling. Nalan Qingyuan still shudders when she remembers the raw power they unleashed that day. Sheng Jiling feels the same. The strength of those two siblings was nothing short of intoxicating, and on this ancient battlefield it has undoubtedly grown even more fearsome. Even if Ye Cheng himself might not measure up to them now, if that mesmerizing sister he spoke of were to appear, all of us combined would scarcely stand a chance. "Incredible, absolutely incredible," Sheng Jiling murmurs under her breath, her eyes clouded with unease. She has long since perfected the Heavenly King stage and stands poised to advance into the realm of the God King. It was a distinction she once wore with pride, her reputation as a prodigy unchallenged, until this battlefield began to test her limits. First came the peerless genius who slew a Taoist with a single sword stroke, and now these two inhumanly strong siblings whose might may well eclipse her own. She glances at her companion, voice heavy with wonder and apprehension. 3,000 realms. When did so many terrifying geniuses start appearing? Nalan Qingyuan couldn't help but glance at Ye Cheng with sympathy. She opened her mouth to offer comfort, but before she could speak, a sharp whoosh cut through the air. In the distance, several streaks of light came hurtling down. At their head strode a young man and woman whose cultivation auras rivaled those of Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling, both clearly peak Heavenly King-level geniuses. The moment their eyes fell on the yumeng mushroom, clutched in Ye Cheng's hand, eager hunger sparked in their gazes. The nearby cultivators, swords drawn and ready to press their attack on Ye Cheng, bristled at the newcomers. They had no intention of sharing the rare mushroom with extra rivals. Yet the moment they recognized who approached, their hostility evaporated. Sentences died on their lips as they respectfully parted to clear a path. "Look, it's Ying Changye and Ying Wushuang, the holy son and daughter of the Ying clan at Yunwu Peak," someone whispered in awe. One of the 8 spiritual peaks under the Yuhang Imperial Palace. At the mere mention of their names, every face grew solemn. It was no small matter. The Ying siblings represented one of the most prestigious branches of Yuhang's domain. And now, with the coveted Yumeng mushroom in play, even the fiercest competition would have to wait. The mere mention of the Yuhang Imperial Palace sent a ripple of awe through the gathered cultivators. Yunwu Peak itself was a genuine Daozun-level powerhouse, a first-rate sect among all the Dao schools who had ventured into the ancient battlefield. At once, disciples from every corner made way, bowing their heads in deference. Ying Changye and his sister, Ying Wushuang, stepped forward undisturbed, their expressions calm and confident. They prepared to join their companions in closing the ring around Ye Cheng. But before they could reach him, 2 familiar voices drifted over from the distance. "Changye, Wushuang, come over here for a moment." Ying Changye and Ying Wushuang paused mid-stride and looked up in surprise. It was Sheng Jiling and Nalan Qingyuan calling them. The 2 siblings exchanged a quick, curious glance. "Qingyuan, Jiling, what are you doing here?" Changye asked as they approached. Without hesitation, they gathered a handful of fellow Ying disciples and made their way toward Sheng Jiling and Nalan Qingyuan, eager to learn why these unexpected guests had arrived at such a pivotal moment. Ying Changye was the first to speak, his brow creased in concern. Something's not right here. Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. Nalan Qingyuan's voice turned grave as he leaned forward. Let me be clear, the young man they've surrounded isn't ordinary. He's extraordinarily gifted, far beyond what these thugs can handle. If they try to capture him, they won't just fail to get the treasure, they might very well lose their lives. What? Ye Cheng blurted, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Chapter 162. When Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling spoke, even Xianxia and Ying Wushuang, always so confident, couldn't help flushing. Yet the younger members of the Ying clan hovering at their sides still eyed the Yumeng mushroom greedily. Brother Xianxia, Sister Wushuang, one of them hissed, pointing at the glowing fungus in Ye Cheng's grasp. That's a Yumeng mushroom. If we deliver it to the clan elders, who knows how much honor we'll earn. We might even persuade them to appoint a new heavenly venerable. Quiet, Xianxia snapped under his breath. Listen to Qingyuan and Jiling. With a snap of their fans, Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling, both acknowledged prodigies and heirs of the Eight Spirits' Peak, projected an air of unshakable authority. The Ying juniors fell silent at once, realizing this matter was above their station. From the perimeter, the other cultivators watched in astonishment. They'd almost moved in to seize the mushroom themselves, but now hesitated as the Ying clan's princes and princesses deferred to Qingyuan and Jiling. Whispers rippled through the circle. What's going on? All felt a flicker of unease, yet no one dared take their eyes off the small, luminous Yumeng mushroom held protectively in Ye Cheng's palm. Its faint, pulsing glow seemed to promise unimaginable rewards, and they were determined not to let it slip away. Forget it, the leader sneered, baring his teeth. The kid's only 7 or 8. How strong could he possibly be? Even if he has a hidden ace up his sleeve, we'll snatch the Yumeng mushroom and be gone before he can even blink. He'll never be able to catch us. With that, the God King level cultivator let out a thunderous roar and launched himself at Ye Cheng. Emboldened by their leader's challenge, the other high-powered fighters, each of them already bristling for action, rushed in to join the assault. In an instant, Ye Cheng found himself the sole target of a coordinated onslaught. From the sidelines, the Ying family's young geniuses held their breath, transfixed by the spectacle. They were certain Ye Cheng didn't stand a chance. It would only be a matter of moments before he fell, and once he was down, the Yumeng mushroom would be theirs for the taking. But the expected swift victory never came. First half an incense stick burned away, then a whole one, and still no decisive outcome. Those who had openly questioned Nalan Qingyuan's caution now stood dumbfounded. Beside them, Ying Changye and his sister Ying Wushuang exchanged stunned glances. None of them could have predicted that the seemingly outmatched boy would hold off an entire cadre of God King level warriors. Even Sheng Jiling's mouth fell open in astonishment. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. At the heart of the encirclement, Ye Cheng stood his ground, teeth gritted. How could this single boy, alone, unleash such staggering power and fend off a ring of dozens of heavenly kings and god kings? Unbelievable, truly unbelievable, she whispered. Nalan Qingyuan, who had been preparing to lend him support, drew in a sharp breath. She, too, had been stunned by the force of his earlier assault, and now it seemed her help was unnecessary. Around them, the surrounding masters exchanged shocked glances. What the hell? This kid's strength is off the charts, one snarled. We can't waste any more time. Finish him off, another thundered. With that, the circle tightened as rival cultivators unleashed their trump cards. Even those who had lingered on the sidelines, hoping to profit from the chaos, could no longer resist the momentum. They surged forward, weapons and techniques at the ready, swelling the ranks of his attackers. Confronted by wave after wave of heaven and god-level experts, Ye Cheng's defenses began to falter. Despite every ounce of his willpower and skill, the pressure closed in from all sides. Even his extraordinary power had its limits, and now, overwhelmed, he could no longer hold out. Startled by the sudden detonation of the spirit sword he'd just shattered, Ye Cheng, Ji, was hurled backward over 100 paces, still clutching the ghost dream mushroom. He didn't cough up blood, but his breathing came in ragged wheezes, his strength clearly sapped by the blast. Hey! "Stop picking on me!" he cried out, tears welling in his eyes. Though both he and his younger brother, Gu Yunxi, were prodigies for their age, they were still merely children, and the sight of so many hostile faces closing in terrified them. Nalan Qingyuan, Sheng Jiling, and even Ying Wushuang felt their hearts clench at the boys' distress, each one itching to rush forward and protect them. But before any of them could move, a ripple of energy sliced through the air, 4, then 5, then 6 distinct auras descending upon the clearing. Every one of those auras belonged to a cultivator of the Xuanhuang realm. Leading the group was a figure whose cultivation had already broken through to Xuanhuang perfection. He advanced with a predatory gleam in his eye. He fixed his gaze on the trembling Ye Cheng and the precious mushroom in his hand, and for a moment greed seemed almost to solidify around him. "This isn't good," Nalan Qingyuan murmured, jaw tightening. He was ready to step forward and unmask himself as a noble scion of the Nalan clan, ready to marshal every ounce of his power to protect these two innocent children. But as the enemy's pursuers closed in, there was no turning back. The fate of Ye Cheng and Gu Yunxi now hinged on a single, desperate stand. As the Emperor Realm cultivators closed in, it became painfully clear that no amount of effort could protect Ye Cheng and the Yumeng mushroom. Even his forged identity as the young master of Balan Peak offered little shield. At best, it might save his life, but the Yumeng mushroom would surely be torn from his grasp. Just when all hope seemed lost, a column of divine light sliced through the sky, descending like a bolt of golden thunder. The ground trembled beneath it, and every cultivator, both friend and foe, lifted their eyes in astonishment. In a heartbeat, the luminous pillar dissolved, and out of its glow stepped a petite girl. Even amid the chaos, Ye Cheng's spirits lifted. He dashed forward, tears in his eyes, and flung his arms around her legs. "Sister! Sister!" he cried. "They're bullying me, a whole group of shameless adults, ganging up on me. Wah!" The girl's eyes blazed with real anger as she knelt to meet him. Gently, she patted his back and spoke in a calm, soothing voice. "Shh! Don't cry, Ye Cheng. Whoever laid a hand on you will answer to me." Of course, this brave little rescuer was none other than Gu Yunxi. After subduing Ye Cheng, Gu Yunxi lifted her hand and let the crackling corpse of the monster she'd been carrying tumble to the ground. It landed with a heavy thud, and for a long moment no one breathed. Every cultivator's eyes were fixed on the fallen beast, and as they took in its massive form, raw fear flickered across their faces. "That's a Yuyan beast! A Yuyan beast's corpse!" A hushed whisper swept through the crowd. Born from the rare Yumeng mushroom, Yuyan beasts can rival Emperor Realm cultivators once fully grown. Even though this one lay dead, its sheer size told everyone it must have been at least a Xuanhuang queen. And those creatures naturally wield spiritual power far beyond others of the same rank. Few would dare claim victory over one, even at peak strength. Yet here stood a young girl who had done just that. "No, maybe she was just lucky, or maybe she only dragged the corpse here," someone murmured. But even as the words left his lips, there was no disguising the tremor of doubt and awe that shook through the assembly. A tremor ran through the assembled cultivators. Whether or not Gu Yunxi had personally slain the Yuyan beast, the fact that he'd returned clutching its corpse was enough to unnerve even the most battle-hardened warriors. No one dared move as Gu Yunxi lifted his hand, shielding Ye Cheng behind him. His cold gaze swept over the enemy ranks. "Ye Cheng," he said, "point out whoever attacked you just now." Ye Cheng didn't hesitate. He lifted his hand and fixed his stare on the strongest god king among their foes, the very man who had unleashed that detonating spiritual sword and sent Ye Cheng reeling. "Very good," Gu Yunxi murmured, nodding once. The targeted god king's face drained of color. He opened his mouth as if to stammer an explanation, but Gu Yunxi's finger was already sweeping decisively through the air. The next instant, a crimson blossom burst between the god king's eyebrows. He staggered back, a single bloody petal falling at his feet as he crumpled in silence. The crowd gasped, and the battlefield fell into an eerie hush. Gu Yunxi had just shown them precisely why he was not to be trifled with. Under the stunned gazes of everyone present, Ye Cheng lifted a single finger and unleashed a thread of spiritual energy. In an instant, with no hint of hesitation, it pierced the perfect god king's brow and annihilated him outright. The assembled warriors went rigid, their scalps tingling and hearts racing in utter shock. Chapter 163, killing a perfect god king in an instant. With power like that, she clearly rivals the Xuanhuang realm itself. Yet the question on everyone's mind was the same. Looking at Gu Yunxi, it was impossible to guess her age. She was barely older than Ye Cheng, perhaps 7 or 8, at most 10 years old. And even the few emperor-level masters who rushed to the scene stood there trembling. How could someone so young possess the strength to slay a perfect god king with a single strike? Rumor had it that the very same girl had personally killed the emperor-ranked Yuyun beast. Such power didn't just inspire fear, it shattered any notion of what was possible. 3,000 realms. When did a monster like this appear? They gasped. But while the spectators were still reeling, Gu Yunxi showed no sign of slowing. Under the steady guidance of Ye Cheng, she unleashed blow after blow. With each attack, another god king fell, their anguished cries echoing through the battlefield. A few attempted to flee, hoping to claw back their lives, but Gu Yunxi pursued them relentlessly. Not one escaped. Anyone who dared face Ye Cheng drew an immediate death sentence from Gu Yunxi's blade. From a short distance away, Nalan Qingyuan and her companions stared in stunned silence. Closer by, the Ying family's brothers and sisters and their kin gripped each other's arms, hearts pounding. They had watched in awe and in terror as Ye Cheng cut down adversaries without mercy. Their eyes kept flicking to Nalan Qingyuan, gratitude shining in every glance. If she hadn't talked them out of joining the assault, they too would have been part of the doomed assault party. Sister Qingyuan, thank you for warning us, the Ying siblings chorused, voices trembling with relief. Nalan Qingyuan waved them off with a wry smile. No need to thank me. To be honest, I never imagined these two siblings could be so overwhelmingly powerful. Just as everyone began to relax, a sudden shout rang out behind them. Huh? Someone else is coming? A brilliant arc of rainbow light tore across the sky, and with it came a sudden burst of sword intent that drew every eye. Yet the onlookers merely glanced at the spectacle, then shook their heads in disappointment and looked away. Those brash enough to try for the Yumeng mushroom earlier had been cut down by Gu Yunxi's blade. The rest stood idle, either too late to intervene or far too weak to make a difference. After witnessing Gu Yunxi's prowess, none dared challenge her again. Even though the newcomer's aura rippled with power at the Xuanhuang level, no one believed she could wrest the Yumeng mushroom from its current owner. Just as the crowd began to lose interest and drift off in search of easier prey, the rainbow light coalesced with a sharp swish and then vanished in an incandescent flash, unveiling a lone figure hovering where the colors had been. All eyes in the audience shifted to her in an instant, faces alight with astonishment and awe. Even Nalan Qingyuan and the others exchanged startled glances. Is that Jian Rushuang? The current emperor's daughter of the Beiming sword sect? What is she doing here? High above the drifting sea of clouds, Jian Rushuang stood perfectly composed. Her calm gaze was fixed on the pale mushroom in Gu Yunxi's hand, the fabled Yumeng mushroom, and a faint gleam of eagerness flickered in her eyes. Since leaving the valley, Jian Rushuang had traveled east alongside Ye Cheng. Under Ye Cheng's divine thought concealment, the two had plundered numerous hidden treasures. Just days ago, Ye Cheng uncovered the shattered remains of an ancient battlefield. There, it was said, lay a broken imperial weapon once wielded by a fallen emperor. Before that corrupted relic could be completely destroyed, its weapon spirit had expended its final strength to weave a protective formation around its master's body, and to cradle its own embryo. The formation's purpose, to prevent the emperor's corpse from being consumed by demonic forces. But the moment anyone broke that forma, tie-in by force, both the imperial remains and the weapon womb would be annihilated together. Now, under Jian Rushuang's steady stare, the Yumeng mushroom pulsed with an otherworldly light. She inhaled slowly, lips curving into the slightest of smiles. Gu Yunxi, she called, her voice clear enough to carry over the wind. May I have a closer look at your treasure? Ye Cheng crouched before the ancient formation's core, studying the fragmented traces of the forbidden runes. Millennia had worn them down, but unraveling their secrets would still take time. He stayed rooted in place, chiseling through layers of mystical energy, while Jian Rushuang slipped away to scout the surroundings. At first, she was simply killing time. Then, to her astonishment, she stumbled across something extraordinary. "Dream mushrooms?" Jian Rushuang whispered, her eyes shining. "Your Highness will treasure these." She darted back to where Gu Yunxi stood, then snapped open her palm. A silver storage ring snapped onto the ground at his feet. "I've filled this ring with 100,000 spirit crystals," she announced, "and I've also sealed within it a Dao protection token, the force of a single strike from a Saint Venerable Elder of my Beiming sword sect." She swept her gaze to Gu Yunxi's expectant face. "Use these as payment for your dream mushrooms. What do you say?" 100,000 spirit crystals, when converted into spirit stones, worth tens of millions. Add to that a Dao protection token, powerful enough to withstand an elder's blow. Though still slightly beneath the mushroom's market value, it was a generous offer, one any cultivator would be hard-pressed to refuse. Everyone at Wanmo Pond fell silent. Even Jian Rushuang's considerable offer, her gleaming storage ring filled with treasures, wasn't enough to distract Gu Yunxi. Instead of examining the ring, Yunxi fixed her gaze on Jian Rushuang, fierce determination blazing in her eyes. From the moment she'd awakened the purple sky erosion thunder body, Gu Yunxi had few equals on the path of cultivation. Not even those prodigies barely a generation older could match her. But Jian Rushuang felt different. The daughter of the North Sea Emperor and one of the 3,000 realm's top talents, Rushuang had already reached the Emperor realm at just 20. Yet rather than intimidating Yunxi, her presence only stoked the younger woman's fighting spirit. "You want my Yumeng mushroom?" Gu Yunxi called out, her voice ringing clear across the pond. "All right, then beat me first." Her words echoed in the hush. Hearts skipped beats as onlookers exchanged stunned looks. Did that bold youngster really just challenge Jian Rushuang herself? The atmosphere crackled with tension. Never had anyone dared, to say nothing of a mere girl, take on the Emperor's own heir. Yet there stood Gu Yunxi, unwavering, ready to fight for the prize she prized above all. Even Nalan Qingyuan and the others couldn't keep their composure. Jian Rushuang froze for a heartbeat, but there was no fury in her expression, only a faint, amused smile. "Interesting," she murmured, her eyes glittering. "Little sister, you really have courage." In the next instant, a sharp, metallic whistle sliced through the air as her spirit sword flew from its scabbard. Jian Rushuang seized the hilt with both hands, and a surge of energy snapped toward Gu Yunxi. Originally, she had planned to bargain harder if Yunxi refused her first offer. After all, as the daughter of the Northern Ming Emperor and the escort of His Highness Ye Cheng, she couldn't afford to let the sword sect, or the prince, lose face in public. Yet she had not anticipated this girl's audacity. Though known for her courtesy, Jian Rushuang was no pushover. "Allow me, your elder sister, to teach you a lesson," she said coolly. "Next time you step out into the world, remember your place. Don't be so reckless." With that, she lunged forward in a silver blur, her blade slashing straight at Gu Yunxi. Chapter 164, Swish. Jian Rushuang, daughter of the North Sea Emperor and renowned as the finest young swordswoman in the 3,000 realms, had just deepened her sword intent during her enlightenment at the Buried Sword Gorge. Now, with a single effortless slash, her sword light flared with such dazzling power it seemed able to freeze the 9 netherworlds and rend the heavens open. She was not even using her full strength. Her true goal was simply to shove Ye Cheng aside, freeing her other hand so she could seize the coveted Yumeng mushroom. But Ye Cheng did not flinch. As Jian Rushuang's blade light swept toward him, he calmly lifted a hand. In an instant, thunder crackled and coalesced into a colossal purple dragon, its scales of crackling lightning illuminating the empty sky. Boom! The dragon's roar shook the void itself as lightning collided against swordlight in a blinding burst. Dust and afterimages spun through the air, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to freeze between the two titanic forces. Jian Rushuang tightened her grip on her sword, her eyes flashing with determination. Across the chasm of power, Ye Cheng stood firm, the storm dragon of lightning swirling around him like an unbreakable shield. Neither was willing to yield first. Only the promise of the Yumeng mushroom stirred them to fight on. Under the stunned gazes of the crowd, Jian Rushuang's blade of light was shredded and obliterated by Gu Yunqi's counterstrike. "What overwhelming power!" someone gasped. "She actually shattered the sword light unleashed by the Northming Emperor's daughter?" The onlookers exchanged startled glances. They had always known Gu Yunqi was strong enough to rank among Xuanhuang realm cultivators, but none dared claim they'd truly measured her might. Even a late-stage or perfected Xuanhuang master would almost certainly be overwhelmed by Jian Rushuang. So, though they respected Gu Yunqi's talent, not a soul, Nalan Qingyuan included, believed she stood a chance in this duel. After all, Jian Rushuang's reputation eclipsed even the emperors of Yuheng Palace and the Huqian sect. In Sheng Jiling's estimation, only that mysterious prodigy who slew the bone-dried Taoist could hope to match him, let alone defeat him. At the edge of the 10,000 Demons Pond, just before the towering Yumeng mushroom, Jian Rushuang's brow creased in disbelief. She had unleashed a blade of scintillating sword light, a trump card attack meant to overwhelm her opponent. Yet Gu Yunqi had not only blocked it, she'd shattered it outright. And this from a child who looked no more than 7 or 8 years old. It was one thing for a little girl, all porcelain skin and downy hair, to parry a strike with some hidden trick. It was quite another to snap it in two, as if she were slaying nothing more than a common sparrow. Jian Rushuang barely had time to gather her wits before Gu Yunqi stepped forward, planting herself firmly between her and the precious fungus. The girl's small frame quivered with restrained power, her dark eyes fixed on Jian Rushuang with unshakable resolve. "With your puny strength, you dare try to take the Yumeng mushroom from me?" Her voice carried more weight than her size suggested. "Are you seeking your own death?" The incongruity of fierce command coming from such a delicate face was startling, but nobody present dared dismiss her threat. They all remembered, with chilling clarity, the day this very girl had swept through a ring of kings and gods to defend Ye Cheng. That display of might was seared into their memories, and in an instant the air around the pond grew deathly still. "Oh!" At Gu Yunqi's retort, Jian Rushuang's eyes flared with the thrill of competition. "You asked for this, little sister. Just don't cry too pathetically when you lose." No sooner had he spoken than his oppressive aura burst forth in a blinding flare. Under the gasps of the assembled cultivators, a blade of pure swordlight shot like a tidal wave toward Gu Yunqi. "Come on!" Unfazed, Gu Yunqi's own gaze ignite, "Ed!" She planted her feet firmly and let out a resounding shout. Drawing on the power of her purple sky eclipse thunder body, she channeled the vast spiritual energy within her into crackling currents of lightning. In an instant, a churning sea of electric light condensed at her fingertips and surged forward to meet Jian Rushuang's sword wave head-on. The clashing energies, sword light and thunder, tore through the air with a deafening roar. The impact at the edge of the 10,000 demons pool unleashed a shockwave so violent that the nearby monks watching the duel staggered backward, their hearts pounding in terror. Even the renowned prodigies, Ye Cheng and Ying Wushuang among them, stood frozen in stunned disbelief at the sheer ferocity of the confrontation. Ye Cheng could hardly believe his eyes. Such power! Is it really possible for someone our age to reach this level? He stood frozen as Jian Rushuang moved with preternatural grace, her spiritual sword a blur of radiant light. Each stroke was precise, each flourish controlled and deadly, and Ye Cheng's heart throbbed with envy. As a devoted sword cultivator himself, he'd always taken pride in his own progress. But beside this feat, his past efforts felt embarrassingly small. "Impressive as she is," his sister Gu Shuang murmured at his side, "haven't you noticed that kid over there? He's even more terrifying." Ye Cheng glanced in her direction and forced a wry smile. He wasn't the only one shaken. Nalan Qingyuan and the other young geniuses shared his stunned expression. They were all peers, all the same age, yet Jian Rushuang's achievements towered above theirs. And if that alone wasn't enough to rattle him, what came next would test every ounce of their resolve. The display of power Ye Cheng just unleashed sent a shock of dismay through everyone present, as if their spirits had been trampled flat. The gap between human beings can be even wider than that between people and dogs. One of the Ying clan's young geniuses snarled in disgust. Beside him, Ying Changye and the others forced hollow laughs, their hearts sinking in bitter defeat. Then, from the ranks of the assembled monks, a great emperor's voice rang out, shaking with alarm. "No, something's wrong." Instantly, the monks snapped back to full awareness. "What's happening?" they asked in unison, turning toward their wise leader. Following his gaze, they all fell silent, eyes widening. At the heart of the battlefield, almost too subtle to notice at first, Ye Cheng's colossal veins of lightning writhed and surged forward, eating away at the space between him and his opponent, Jian Rushuang. Each crackle of electricity scorched the air and churned the earth beneath their feet. Despite Jian Rushuang's formidable reputation, it was clear Ye Cheng held the upper hand. "How is this possible?" Xianxia muttered, rubbing his eyes in stunned disbelief. The monks, too, exchanged looks of astonishment. Never before had they witnessed such a decisive shift in a duel of this caliber. Yet there it was, the raw, undeniable proof that Ye Cheng's strength had eclipsed even the seasoned Jian Rushuang. Jian Rushuang's voice cracked with disbelief. This was Jian Rushuang, one of the handful of top geniuses in the 3,000 realms, fully worthy of a spot on the Shenzhou Earth leaderboard. Yet here she was, completely overpowered by a boy not even 10 years old. It felt like the world had gone mad. Even Nalan Qingyuan and the others stood frozen, mouths agape. None of them had ever imagined that Ye Cheng's strength would reach such terrifying heights. At the heart of the battlefield, Jian Rushuang felt the electric energy surging ever more violently around Ye Cheng. A cold light kindled in her eyes. Finding her voice at last, she said, "Young master, your power is extraordinary, but you cannot win this fight." Her gaze blazed, not with doubt, but with pure resolve. Yes, Ye Cheng's talent had far exceeded her expectations, but that alone didn't matter. Since unlocking the truth hidden within the buried sword gorge, her own cultivation had soared to new realms. Now, as her sword intent rippled outward like a gathering storm, Jian Rushuang prepared to make her final, decisive move. Jian Rushuang's brow furrowed as the latent sword intent of the Earth Sword, proof of her greatest achievement, flared into view, then slid silently into the spiritual blade in her grasp. The blade shimmered, crackling with barely contained power, ready to unleash at a moment's notice. Across from her, Guyanxi stood motionless, yet her gaze was fierce, alert to every shift in Rushuang's aura. A sly smile curved her lips. "Already decided who'll win. Don't get ahead of yourself." With those words, Guyanxi drew deeply on the purple sky erosion thunderbody's blessing. Lightning crackled through her chi si, and the very air around her roiled with electricity. In an instant, a thunderous tide erupted overhead, purple gold bolts snaking together into the form of a colossal dragon, its scales alight with roaring energy. The onlookers, dozens of cultivators gathered on the ridge, held their breath. Some swallowed hard, others clenched trembling fists. Every eye was fixed on the two combatants, each a peerless marvel in their own right, as they readied themselves for the final, decisive clash. A tension so thick it hummed vibrationally filled the arena. Sword intent versus Thunder Dragon, the next instant would determine who emerged triumphant and who would be forever consigned to defeat. Just as everyone believed the fight was about to end, a commanding voice rang out. "Stop!" Under the stunned gazes of both sides, a bolt of thunderous light exploded at the battlefield's center. The man at its heart pressed a hand to his forehead, looking utterly exasperated. At his single word, Jian Rushuang and Guyanxi froze where they stood. "What kind of immortal is this?" they whispered in awe. Chapter 165. Everyone watching the duel went utterly silent. When the newcomer appeared between Jian Rushuang and Guyanxi, shock rippled through the crowd. Even Sheng Jiling, standing beside Nalan Qingyuan, froze in her tracks, her eyes widening as if she'd seen a ghost. "Jiling, what's wrong? Do you know this person?" Nalan Qingyuan asked, baffled by her panicked expression. Sheng Jiling could barely speak. It's him, Qingyuan. It really is him." Who are you talking about?" "He's the one I warned you about, the peerless genius who slew that Taoist master with a single sword strike." Nalan Qingyuan staggered back a step, disbelief plain on his face. Before him stood Ye Cheng, flanked by his siblings, Guyanxi and Gu Qingchen. Each of the three had already earned a fearsome reputation, their prodigious talents said to outshine an entire generation of cultivators across the 3,000 realms. And now, here they were together at last. His mind reeled. All three of them, at the same time? The gathering buzzed with awe and apprehension. Nothing would ever be the same again. They arrived on the ancient battlefield at the very same instant, an almost unthinkable coincidence. Nalan Qingyuan stared toward the center, shock and confusion warring on his face. What's the connection between this peerless genius, that brother and sister duo, and Jian Rushuang? Even more bewildering, how could a single word from him have halted both Jian Rushuang and the young sister in mid-strike? It wasn't only Nalan Qingyuan frozen in place. Sheng Jiling, the Ying siblings, and the monks surrounding the arena all stood agop. Before anyone could recover, Jian Rushuang's voice rang out, fierce determination blazing in her eyes. Your Highness, please, do not worry. I will defeat her. Rushuang will not fail you. On the surface, Jian Rushuang had seemed at a disadvantage, but she had yet to unleash the Earth Sword's true power. Now that its full might had been awakened, defeating Gu Yunxi was a foregone conclusion. Ye Cheng felt a cold line of sweat trickle down his temple as he opened his mouth to explain. Gu Yunxi and Gu Qingchen came sprinting one after the other, faces alight with joy. "Daddy, it's Daddy!" they cried in unison. Silence fell over the crowd. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck every cultivator present, frying their thoughts and rendering their eyes glassy. Even Jian Rushuang froze in mid-stance, his blade halted in mid-air. What was happening? Daddy? The peerless little prodigy he'd been battling so fiercely all this time was the daughter of Prince Ye Cheng? And that meant he'd been clashing swords with, well, actual royalty. In that instant, Jian Rushuang's fighting spirit dissolved. Gu Yunxi leapt into her father's arms, burying her face against his chest. She glanced up at Jian Rushuang, then remembered how he'd respectfully addressed her father as Your Highness just moments ago. So this, she realized, wasn't some disciple bound to her father, but an outsider. For a heartbeat, father, daughter, and opponent simply stared at one another, the air thick with awkward astonishment. Jian Rushuang, more stunned than embarrassed, finally bowed his head, his mind reeling over the siblings' prodigious talent and the sheer improbability of what he'd just discovered. With His Highness as their father, it's only natural these two siblings would display such exceptional talent. Jian Rushuang's eyes shone with acceptance, but the surrounding cultivators were anything but calm. They actually call him Daddy? One stammered. That adorable little girl is the daughter of that white-robed swordsman? Another whispered in disbelief. My heavens, what kind of lineage does this swordsman hail from to have such a captivating child? A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. The elders, more experienced in courtly intrigues, exchanged knowing looks. Didn't you hear? Even the late Beiming Emperor's own daughter addressed him as Your Highness. Their bond must run far deeper than we realize. Every murmur only fueled the astonishment. Though Ye Cheng had yet to unleash his true power, the reverence in Jian Rushuang and Gu Yunxi's demeanor spoke volumes. Nalan Qingyuan, Sheng Jiling, and the others stood agape, their preconceived notions shattered. With a quiet authority, Ye Cheng guided his sister and brother, alongside Jian Rushuang and two loyal disciples, toward the mountain's heart, where the rare Yumeng mushroom and the demon pill of the Yuyun beast awaited. Having secured their prizes, they slipped away into the swirling mists, leaving behind a hushed crowd brimming with awe and endless questions. Nalan Qingyuan and the others slowly came back to their senses, their gazes fixed in astonishment on Ye Cheng's retreating figure. No wonder so many prodigious talents have gathered here, someone whispered. It turns out they're all from the same clan. Sheng Jiling fell in step behind him, her eyes sparkling like twin stars. Beside her, Nalan Qingyuan felt a peculiar stirring in her chest, an unnameable resonance that Ye Cheng's presence seemed to awaken. The sensation was delicate and fleeting, slipping through her grasp just as she tried to understand it. Sheng Jiling's excited voice drew her back. Forget the Yuheng Emperor's son and the young master of the Guardian of Heaven, she breathed, heat and admiration shining in her eyes. Next to him, they're amateurs. He's the true, unrivaled genius. As the words hung between them, both women watched Ye Cheng stride confidently into the distance, convinced that they had witnessed the rise of a peerless talent. Nalan Qingyuan frowned, casting a wary look at Sheng Jiling. Jiling, don't say I didn't warn you. This Taoist brother you're so taken with is already married and has children. Xianxia waved her hand dismissively. So what? Even being in his presence is enough for me. Besides, maybe his concubine slot hasn't been filled yet. Nalan sighed, defeated by her friend's infatuation. All right, but I'm warning you. Huh? Xianxia blinked, finally noticing the concern on Nalan face. Warn me about what? He's walking away, Nalan pointed out, and you haven't even asked his name or where he comes from. Xianxia's jaw dropped. Oh, damn it! She lunged forward, weaving desperately through the crowd, but it was too late. Ye Cheng and his party had already vanished down the path. All she could do was stand there, chest tightening with regret, as she watched the blank space where he'd been. The wind swept across Luoyu Mountain, a focal point of the ancient battlefield. Here, at its very heart, demons from the outer realms often appeared without warning, testing the mettle of any cultivator brave or foolish enough to pass through. The outer demons in this region proved surprisingly weak, no stronger than your average human cultivator. Most lingered at the Calamity Realm, and king-rank demons were almost unheard of. That's why so many human cultivators had ventured into the ancient battlefield around Luoyu Mountain to see what they might find. Among them was Ye Cheng. Though he'd yet to link up with a master, he'd made fast friends with several peers, each roughly Calamity Realm in strength. Individually, they weren't formidable, but by pooling their resources and relying on the trump card treasures their elders had entrusted to them, they'd managed to push forward to the slopes of Falling Rain Mountain. Local legend held that in the Old War, one of humanity's greatest emperors had made his stand here. He'd unleashed his famed Mountain Gate formation directly onto the battlefield, halting a 100,000-strong demon host. In the aftermath, the formation itself shattered. Over the ages, its broken stones and collapsing ruins gave rise to the peaks and ravines now called Falling Rain Mountain. One of their number, a tall woman in her mid-20s named Lan Ruoyun, stood out in her flowing blue skirt. She turned to Yan Mengqi and the other younger disciples with a warm smile and explained, although the formation array set up by the great emperor on Mount Luoyu was shattered long ago, its spiritual veins remain. Combined with the unique conditions of the ancient battlefield, Mount Luoyu still produces an abundance of rare spiritual herbs. Every time the ancient battlefield reopens, cultivators from across the lands flock here in search of treasure. A 6th-rank herb was even discovered here once, one of the juniors blurted. Wow! A 6th-rank spiritual herb, the others gasped, their eyes lighting up as they stared at the looming mountain. Lan Ruoyun chuckled softly, covering her mouth as she saw how fired up they were. Don't get your hopes too high, she teased. 6th-rank herbs are extraordinarily scarce. Even here, finding one is almost like touching a star. Lan Ruoyun leaned against a smooth boulder, her dark eyes bright with anticipation. Listen, she called, voice carrying across the mist-shrouded slopes of Luoyu Mountain. Once the ancient battlefield has opened 10 times, only 1 or 2 fortunate cultivators ever unearth its deepest secrets. This is our chance, so keep your spirits high and your eyes sharp. Yan Mengqi and the others exchanged determined nods. Nearby, Ye Cheng flexed his fingers, the faint pulse of spiritual energy twining around his palms. Together, the small party fanned out across the rocky terrain, each member intent on locating rare herbs buried among the mountain's crags. The hunt proved more perilous than they'd expected. Before long, a trio of calamity-grade demons, each a half-king in power, rushed from a hidden grotto. With barely a moment's hesitation, Lan Ruoyun and Yan Mengqi joined Ye Cheng in a seamless assault. Spells flared, talismans blazed, and within heartbeats the demons lay defeated, their withered forms dissolving into motes of dark qi. The victory only deepened their resolve. By day's end, the group's efforts bore fruit. Handfuls of 4th-rank spiritual herbs lay piled at their feet, remedies said to rival the power of King Realm concoctions. Laughter and excited chatter filled the air as they sorted their bounty, each precious leaf and root a testament to their teamwork. Just as they began to celebrate, a ripple of motion above caught Ye Cheng's eye. He looked upward to see a small spirit boat piercing the rolling clouds, its pale hull gleaming in the sun. All at once, the mountain fell silent. What new arrival would this mysterious vessel bring? The answer hovered on the edge of the clouds and just beyond their reach. Ye Cheng stood on the deck of the spirit vessel, hands clasped behind his back and a rebellious gleam in his eye. Behind him loomed 7 or 8 emperor-rank cultivators, each radiating a suffocating, awe-inspiring aura. The moment the boat made its appearance, every practitioner on Mount Luoyu froze in astonishment. Could it be the Golden Summit sect? Someone whispered. Their spirit vessel is said to carry 5 grand xuanzuns. Chapter 166. A great throng of cultivators had gathered on the slopes of Luoyu Mountain. When the spirit boat appeared on the horizon, its banner snapping proudly in the wind, every face in the crowd shifted, eyes widening with awe. The Jinding sect, commanded by its 5 great xuanzuns, was legendary. No other force entering the ancient battlefield could match its prestige. And now, at the helm of that boat, stood its infamous young master. "That's Ye Cheng," murmured an elder cultivator, voice low with reverence. "The true Yang Heavenly King. He broke through to the Heavenly King realm at just 27. Another smirked. "You know him? Well, I'm glad you spoke up. Saves me the introduction." From his lofty perch on the spirit boat, Ye Cheng smirked in turn. His cool gaze swept the crowd below, a flicker of greed sparking in his eyes. Since achieving the rank of Imperial Deacon alongside several peers, he had been itching to visit Luoyu Mountain, and now that he'd arrived, nothing could deter him. Ye Cheng relied on the broken cloud boat his father had given him, a vessel perfectly suited for crossing this ancient battlefield, to reach Flying Rain Mountain in record time. As he hovered just beyond sight of the slopes, everything unfolded exactly as he had predicted. "It's still early," Zhenyang Tianwang murmured, his eyes fixed on the small figures scrambling toward Luoyu Mountain. "Those rushing ahead are only minor cultivators, not even at the Imperial Realm yet. This is the perfect chance." His Imperial Realm disciples pressed forward, voices hushed. "Young master, shall we drive them off?" "By all means," Zhenyang replied with a grim smile, "but leave their spiritual herbs and medicines for me." The Jinding sect's deacons exchanged knowing grins and bowed in unison. "Don't worry, young master, we'll handle it." In an instant, the broken cloud boat seemed to blur as several Imperial Realm masters descended, forming a ring around the mountain's base. From his lofty vantage, Zhenyang Tianwang's voice rang out, cold as steel. "Who gave you the right to be here? This mountain was claimed by your Jinding sect's young master. You'd better clear out, now, if you value your lives and your treasures. How dare you trespass and pilfer the spiritual herbs here? How dare you? Return every single herb you've collected at once." At the harsh injunctions of the 2 Emperor Realm cultivators from the Jinding sect, everyone on Falling Rain Mountain froze, faces drained of color and then flushing with indignation. Long hidden, this mountain's rich bounty of herbs and medicines was now being claimed as the Jinding sect's private cache by these newcomers, led by their young master no less. Who were they to seize what the ancient sages of the human race had set aside for all to find? Though Luoyu Mountain's slopes teemed with seekers from dozens of factions, outright clashes had been rare. After all, most cultivators preferred to focus on gathering precious plants rather than picking fights. Yet the mountain was hardly tranquil. Demons of every rank, King Realm behemoths, half-king marauders, even Calamity Realm horrors, lurked among the crags, ever ready to ambush an unwary pilgrim. A cold wind rustled through the pines as the Jinding sect's young master, Ye Cheng, strode forward. Clad in flowing black robes trimmed with gold, his gaze swept over the assembled cultivators with imperious disdain. "You trespassed without permission," he declared, voice echoing against the stony cliffs. "And now you dare defy the Jinding sect? Return what you've taken, or suffer the consequences." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some bristled at the insult. Others dared not challenge an Emperor Realm prodigy. But in the tense silence that followed, every pair of eyes shifted, aware that the true danger on Falling Rain Mountain did not come from human disputes, but from the monsters waiting in silence, ready to pounce on any weakness. The cultivators had fought bloody battles to harvest those precious spiritual herbs, only to be ordered to hand them over without a word of thanks. Outraged, one young cultivator ground his teeth and summoned his courage. "Your Majesty, we didn't realize this was the true Yang Heavenly King's territory. We left at once, but these herbs were gathered by our own hands. I beg your understanding." "Understanding? The true Yang Heavenly King's eyes glittered like shards of ice. The cultivator's heart thumped wildly as he took a hesitant step back, but it was already too late. With barely a flicker of movement, a streak of silvery light shot from the king's outstretched hand. In an instant, the cultivator was cleaved in two, and a spray of blood arced through the air. Who else dares lay claim to these herbs? The Heavenly King's voice was low and chillingly calm. The surrounding cultivators swallowed hard, their faces paling as fear crept into their eyes. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, from the edge of the circle, the faintest sound of gritted teeth announced that someone was still willing to fight. Heavenly King Zhenyang, I admit you're unrivaled in the Golden Summit sect, but don't overstep your bounds. The man who spoke was the same age as Heavenly King Zhenyang, though his cultivation stood a notch lower, just at Xuanwang perfection. Yet he'd broken through before turning 30, his talent and background enough to earn him a place among the sect's elite. In fact, Zhenyang himself had taken note of him. Oh, you must be one of the 5 true disciples of the Scarlet Rainbow sect, Ye Cheng said, expression cool. Pride flickered in the young disciple's eyes. He opened his mouth to agree, but before a word could form, the very spiritual energy of the surroundings shifted, spiking like a storm on the horizon. His confidence drained away, replaced by palpable fear. What are you planning? He stammered. He never got an answer. A streak of blade light cleaved the air with terrifying speed and precision. In a single, merciless strike, Ye Cheng ended the life of the Scarlet Rainbow sect's true disciple. The uprooted chi scattered like ash, and the man crumpled to the ground, his threat extinguished in an instant. Fool, there's only one Xuanzun in the entire Feihong sect, and even he's a hopeless case. He'll never reach the late Xuanzun stage in his life. And you, the true Yang Heavenly King sneered, with such pitiful backing, dare to shout at me? His contemptuous words sent a chill through the ranks of cultivators. Under his overwhelming aura, no one dared protest the confiscation of their precious spirit herbs. Having just slain Feihong sect's true disciple, Ye Cheng, the true Yang Heavenly King paused to survey their wide-eyed fear. A flicker of something, regret, amusement, it was hard to tell, crossed his face before a playful smile curved his lips. You thought you could slip away? I'm afraid you're far too late. He gave a languid nod toward the cowering crowd. I offered you mercy once, and you spurned it. What other choice did I have? Ye Cheng watched the true Yang Heavenly King's icy gaze sweep over the assembled cultivators. A hint of cruelty curled at the corner of the king's lips as he spoke, his voice deceptively calm. I'll be merciful. For now, I'll grant you one more chance to live. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. First, hand over every spiritual herb and medicinal root you've harvested so far. Then return to Luoyu Mountain, gather all the remaining herbs, and deliver them to me. No excuses, no delays. He lifted a single hand, tracing a glowing circle in midair. When the light faded, it encircled roughly 1/3 of the crowd. These souls will serve as examples. A murmur rippled through the cultivators. They'd expected slaughter, yet the king's power had only marked them. Confused and frightened, they exchanged glances. Finally, a young cultivator from within the circle found his voice. His words trembled in the hush. Your Majesty, what do you mean by examples? True Yang's smile turned cold and sharp. He met the man's gaze directly. Since you asked first, you'll go first. He nodded at the trembling cultivator, eyes alight with merciless intent. Tell me the name of the patron who protects you. In that instant, Ye Cheng tightened his fists. The king's game had begun, and it would cost someone dearly. True Yang Heavenly King hovered above the glowing seal etched into the cavern floor, his cold gaze sweeping over the dozen or so cultivators trapped within its bounds. The talisman's light pulsed, confirming their imprisonment. There was no escape unless he willed it. If any of you can soothe my fury, he said in a low, mocking tone, you may go free. Failing that, I suggest you prepare to join Feihong sect's true disciple on his journey to the underworld. A young cultivator, pale and wide-eyed, stumbled forward, voice quavering. Your Majesty, spare me. I'll scour the mountains for spirit herbs. I'll serve you in any way you command. The Heavenly King's laugh echoed coldly through the chamber. You? A lowly herb seeker? With a casual flick of his wrist, he unleashed a shockwave of divine force. The man's expression barely registered surprise before his body crumpled, lifeless. Next, the king called without the slightest hint of remorse. A collective gasp rose from the circle. Every captive's face went white. Mengchi and Lan Ruoyun exchanged desperate glances. Hours ago, they'd simply been onlookers, but now they too were bound by the Heavenly King's barrier. And none could tell what awaited them if they failed to calm his wrath. Chapter 167. Next. High above the arena, the True Yang Heavenly King's voice rang out, dripping with arrogance. He basked in the fearful gazes of the crowd below, each look fueling his pride. One by one, his chosen opponents stepped forward, yet none of their backers gave him pause. After all, he had already slaughtered the Feihong sect's true disciples without a second thought. The rest boasted patrons no stronger than that doomed disciple. How could any of them threaten him? In his eyes it was simple. Answer his summons, and you were as good as dead. He let out a mocking laugh. Oh, a disciple of the Qiang sect, is it? Fascinating. He leaned forward, amusement sparkling in his cold eyes. If memory serves, your sect's founder, though he was near his end, had reached the late Xuanzun realm. Quite the reputation to live up to. A cruel smile curved the Heavenly King's lips as he surveyed the young man below. Tell me your name. Ye Cheng stepped onto the platform without hesitation, his stance steady and composed. He met the True Yang Heavenly King's gaze without flinching. I am Ye Cheng, he said clearly. Disciple of the Qiang sect. The arena fell into a hush. Even among the fearful onlookers, a ripple of surprise ran through the crowd. All eyes locked on Ye Cheng, waiting to see whether this lone youth could transform the True Yang Heavenly King's mockery into something far more dangerous. The moment the Qiang sect disciple heard those words, he scrambled to his feet with a fawning grin. Yes, your highness, the late Xuanzun Heavenly King. May I be excused now? Before the words had even left his mouth, the True Yang Heavenly King's smile vanished. With one contemptuous flick of his wrist, "Pah!" he sent the disciple flying. The young man crumpled to the ground, his mockery still frozen on his lips, eyes staring blankly into the sky. The Heavenly King shook his head, as if pitying a broken toy. Such a shame, he murmured. You're only an inner disciple of the Qiang sect, hardly even a full disciple. Your leader is at best a late Xuanzun, far too weak to earn this young lord's respect. A hush fell over the onlookers, a circle of talented cultivators who had come hoping to impress. Instead, they watched their comrade's life snuffed out in an instant. Despair twisted their faces. Next, the True Yang Heavenly King clapped once, then nonchalantly wiped the blood from his palm on his sleeve. His voice cut through the stunned silence, challenging the next hopeful candidate to step forward. The courtyard fell deathly still as Yan Mengchi, Lan Ruoyun, and the others watched their fortunes plummet. None of them dared to breathe. Even the lowly disciples of the Qiang sect and the true disciples of the Feihong sect had already been struck down without mercy. Now it was Lan Ruoyun's turn. Lan Ruoyun's heart thundered in her chest. She was the most illustrious among them. Her Lan family boasted a venerable lineage, yet their clan's so-called ancestor had only just broken into the Xuanhuang realm. Here, in front of the True Yang Heavenly King, that achievement counted for almost nothing. In the face of his authority, even an ant would be considered mid-sized at best. Next, the True Yang Heavenly King intoned, his voice cold as steel. He lifted his hand, calling out a name that sent Lan Ruoyun's knees weak. In that instant, her despair solidified into defiance. Eyes blazing, she straightened and met his gaze unflinchingly. Ye Cheng, standing silently at the edge of the group, gripped his longsword, ready to intervene but unable to move. Come on, Lan Ruoyun challenged, her voice surprisingly steady. Tell me the name that I'm supposed to fear. A cruel smile crept across the Heavenly King's face. He drew a long breath, savoring the moment before the massacre he so dearly adored. Around him, the air pulsed with his murderous intent, and none of them would survive this trial. Lan Ruoyun wavered on her feet, saved from collapse only by Yan Mengchi's quick arm around her shoulder. The once formidable sister Lan looked utterly spent, her eyes glassy, her breath uneven, and Yan Mengchi's heart clenched in helpless sorrow. As the daughter of Queen Xuan, Lan Ruoyun's lineage and martial prowess far surpassed their own, yet she had never once looked down on them. It was by her steady guidance that they had journeyed untroubled all the way to Falling Rain Mountain. Now, seeing her in such a state, Yan Mengqi felt pain sharper than any blade. But against the true Yang Heavenly King, she could think of no plan, no plea strong enough to save them. The true Yang Heavenly King paid no heed to Yan Mengqi's silent agony. His cold gaze rested squarely on Lan Ruoyun, a hungry anticipation gleaming in his eyes and a cruel, knowing smile on his lips. He surveyed them both, Lan Ruoyun and Yan Mengqi, appraising their beauty as one might inspect rare jewels. All he waited for was their submission, their kneeling prostration, their desperate entreaties, anything that would humiliate them into begging for mercy. And then, perhaps, he might deign to let them live. True Yang Heavenly King's heart leapt at the memory. He could hardly contain his excitement. But his elation quickly soured when he realized that, despite his threats, Lan Ruoyun would not yield. Even as he trembled with barely suppressed power, she kept her head high, lips pressed into a firm line. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Master Jin Ding," she said coolly. "There's no one behind me that you have reason to fear." A flicker of rage crossed the king's face. "Then begin," he commanded, voice low and dangerous. Lan Ruoyun lifted an eyebrow in confusion. True Yang Heavenly King's eyes blazed, his aura turning razor-sharp in an instant. "Very well," he snarled, laughter laced with malice. "Since you insist on tempting death, who am I to refuse?" He raised his hand, and spiritual light crackled at his fingertips, aimed straight at her heart. At that critical moment, Yan Mengqi, standing just to the side, could hold back no longer. She swallowed her fear, stepped forward, and cried, "No!" Her voice shook, but she forced herself on. "Your Majesty, please, don't do this. I have a friend who can protect her. He is the young master of Tianshu Pavilion, Ye Cheng." The words hung in the air as True Yang Heavenly King's raised hand wavered, the tension between life and death suspended by a single name. "I wonder if the King of True Yang will actually spare Sister Lan and the rest of us because of this connection," Yan Mengqi whispered, her heart pounding. In her mind, the only person who might dare stand up to the King of True Yang was Ye Cheng. Zhenyang Tianwang, the King of True Yang, could not help but frown at her words. He knew the name Tianshu Pavilion all too well. Although his own Jinding sect was not a power in Qianyu proper, it bordered that land and lay within the sphere of Tianshu Pavilion's influence. Yes, the Jinding sect was the preeminent Xuanzun force in its realm, home to countless supreme Xuanzun giants, but its reach never extended beyond its own territory. By contrast, Tianshu Pavilion's reputation spanned dozens, if not hundreds, of realms, and it boasted 2 perfect realm saints. Such a gulf in strength made Zhenyang Tianwang hesitant to dismiss Yan Mengqi's suggestion outright. Yet as he studied her face, doubt still flickered in his eyes. After all, Yan Mengqi's own talent and cultivation were, by any measure, entirely average. Zhenyang Tianwang's heart thudded with doubt. Could this girl really have any connection to the young master of Tianshu Pavilion? By all rights, their circles didn't overlap. Yet if she spoke the truth, forces like the Qianyu Overlord or the Saint Venerable Taoist sect might intervene. And if those powers chose to strike here, not even the young master of the Jingding sect could guarantee the safety of his entire school. He forced himself to mask his anxiety. Leaning forward, he fixed Yan Mengqi with a steely glare, every line of his body radiating authority. "You claim to know this young master of Tianshu Pavilion," he said. "Tell me his name, and don't waste my time if you're bluffing." Yan Mengqi met his stare calmly. "His name is Ye Cheng. I came here on the Tianshu warship with him." Zhenyang Tianwang's eyes narrowed. He was aware that Tianshu Pavilion had recently welcomed a new pavilion master, but a young master? That was news to him. He studied her face for any sign of deception, determined to learn whether this claim held water. He'd only asked that question to see if Yan Mengqi was lying, and now it was clear she wasn't. "Ye Cheng?" Yan Mengqi's voice was soft, carrying just enough uncertainty to let him know she was waiting for his response. Chapter 168. After a moment's hesitation, the true Yang Heavenly King let the wager drop. He nodded slightly, as if committing her name to memory, then waved his hand. "Very well. Since you represent Tianshu Pavilion, I'll grant you this courtesy, leave at once. But all the spirit herbs and medicines you've collected must remain behind." Yan Mengqi's eyes widened in astonishment. It actually worked. Moments before, she had been certain they'd failed this trial. Now, even though they would forfeit the precious medicines won in their bloody skirmish, they scarcely cared. With determined resolve, Yan Mengqi and her companions abandoned their hall. Supporting the still-dazed Lan Ruoyun, they hurried out of the circle the king had drawn. Once beyond its boundary, they let out a collective sigh of relief. Lan Ruoyun's expression was one of sheer shock. She looked as though she had narrowly escaped a catastrophe. Though she had stood so confidently before the true Yang Heavenly King, she now realized just how dire her situation had been. Having barely conquered that level, the young cultivator's emotions wavered between relief and lingering fear. Yet she could not shake Yan Mengqi's final remark. Turning toward her, shock flared in her eyes, and it wasn't only hers. The other young practitioners nearby wore identical expressions of astonishment. They all knew Yan Mengqi's humble origins in the tiny spiritual domain, backed only by a demi-king rather than a full sovereign. How could someone of such modest pedigree have any ties to the legendary Tianshu Pavilion? Everyone had heard of the pavilion's power, an authority far above their own. The very idea seemed impossible. Still, this was no time for questions. If Yan Mengqi was bluffing, wearing a tiger's skin to pose as a tiger, then exposing her facade would seal their doom. So, despite the torrent of doubts in their minds, each resolved to depart Luoyu Mountain at the earliest opportunity, eager to leave behind the dangerous games of power and deception unfolding there. Ye Cheng watched anxiously as the fleeing cultivators slipped beyond the true Yang Heavenly King's barrier. Those left behind turned to him with envious, pleading eyes, silently begging him to save them too. He swallowed hard. He didn't dare. The true Yang Heavenly King was notoriously capricious and ruthlessly fond of slaughter. Only by invoking his title of Dust Brother had Ye Cheng managed to intimidate the king long enough to free his own companions. If he tried to rescue more, the king's temper would flare, and he'd drag everyone back inside the circle to be butchered. Without any proof of ties to Tianshu Pavilion, Ye Cheng was powerless. He could do no more than sigh in helpless frustration. Inside the barrier, the true Yang Heavenly King's fury simmered. He glared at Ye Cheng's downcast figure, then at the frantic faces pressing against the invisible wall. His eyes narrowed, voice icily contemptuous. "Why are you still here? Must I see you off as well? Do you really think that under the aegis of Tianshu Pavilion you can run wild, playing the untouchable saint whom no one dares challenge?" The true Yang Heavenly King's words dripped with lethal intent. Yan Mengqi and the others paled, casting pitying glances at those who had begged for help before turning away in helpless resignation. Just as Yan Mengqi felt a stab of remorse, a cold, imperious voice rang down from the ninth heaven, echoing through the roiling mists above Falling Rain Mountain. "With the backing of my Tianshu Pavilion, Miss Yan, you may indulge your sanctimony to your heart's content. Or do you, young master of the Jinding sect, imagine you can forbid my pavilion's allies from seeing justice done?" As the voice faded, a fierce wind swept the slopes. The cultivators on Falling Rain Mountain looked up in stunned silence. From the depths of the cloud sea, a figure emerged, an old man draped in a midnight black robe. Within moments, waves of his potent qi radiated outward, enveloping the entire mountain and stretching 1,000 miles beyond. A heavenly venerable. Is that a contemporary heavenly venerable? Whispers of astonishment rippled through the assembly. Atop the sea of clouds stood none other than Venerable Master Shen Yi, one of the great heavenly venerables serving under the Tianshu Pavilion. His very presence sent shockwaves through everyone present. As news of his identity spread, cultivators exchanged awed glances. "The Tianshu Pavilion's supreme venerable," they murmured. Even the true Yang Heavenly King, who had only moments ago bragged himself into the spotlight, was rendered speechless. He'd blustered for the sake of face, never imagining he would actually come face to face with the pavilion's supreme leader. Beneath Shen Yi's cold, appraising gaze, the true Yang Heavenly King's bravado evaporated, replaced by crushing regret. If only he'd known the heavenly venerable was here, he would have kept his proud mouth shut. Forcing a deferential smile, he cleared his throat, determined to smooth over the tension between Tong Tian'er and Venerable Master Shen Yi. Ye, the Heavenly Master, didn't even glance at Ye Cheng. Instead, his eyes fell on Yan Mengqi, whose surprise showed on her face. With a gentle smile, he greeted her. "Miss Yan, it's been so long. I never expected to run into you here." Yan Mengqi's heart skipped a beat. Of course, Ye remembered her. She had been at his young master's side aboard the Tianshu warship. How could he have forgotten? She, on the other hand, had no idea who he was. Supreme Tianzun, like Ye, practiced in seclusion deep within the ship's core. Although their divine senses spanned every corner of the vessel, she'd never actually met him before. Now, hearing his courteous words, her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She knew this kindness wasn't for her sake, but all because of Ye Cheng's connection to the Heavenly Master. At her side, Lan Ruoyun and the others exchanged stunned glances, equally surprised by Ye's unexpected greeting. They had all been uneasy at first, fearing Yan Mengqi's story was a fabrication meant to dupe the true Yang Heavenly King, but the way Yi Tianzun treated her with such courtesy left no room for doubt. So Mengqi wasn't lying, someone whispered. She really knows the young master of Tianshu Pavilion. Across the hall, Zhenyang Tianwang's face darkened. Yi Tianzun had completely ignored him, speaking only with Yan Mengqi. Though fury seethed within, Zhenyang forced a flattering smile, pressing his lips so tightly they nearly cracked. As soon as Yi Tianzun and Yan Mengqi ended their formal greeting, Zhenyang opened his mouth to speak, but Yi Tianzun raised a hand to silence him. With a courteous nod to the young master of the Jinding sect standing nearby, he let his smile slip into something colder, an expression laced with barely concealed contempt. In the realm of the heavenly venerate, Yi Tianzun's divine senses reached everywhere. He knew exactly whom he chose to acknowledge, and whom he did not. Yi had heard all about the disturbance on Luoyu Mountain long before he arrived, and he knew exactly what had happened. He bore no love for the bloodthirsty, cruel young master of the Jinding sect, least of all this so-called true Yang Heavenly King, who had already dared to threaten Yan Mengqi once. For that alone, Yi could never let him walk away unpunished. A faint, cold smile touched his lips as he fixed the true Yang Heavenly King with an unblinking stare. "Save your excuses. I have no interest in listening to you. From this moment on, you will do as I command." My commands?" The Heavenly King's voice trembled as he took a stumbling step back. At that, he froze, his eyes widening in sudden horror as recognition dawned. His entire body went rigid. Yi Tianzun's smile deepened. He met the king's panicked gaze and spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "You remember now? Excellent. Then it's settled. We'll proceed by my rules." Ye Cheng's sword gleamed under the pale dawnlight atop Luoyu Mountain. The wind whipped his robes around his lean frame, but his eyes remained steady, unblinking. Below him, the true Yang Heavenly King, flanked by a dozen elite disciples, hesitated on the rocky slope. Ye Cheng's voice rang out, calm but unyielding. "Now, bring forth the powerful backer you claim will make me quake in fear." A murmur rippled through the Heavenly King's entourage. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the true Yang Heavenly King straightened his robes, attempting to muster authority. "If you can't produce this backer," he snarled, "then today, Luoyu Mountain will become your grave." Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to pause in anticipation. Ye Cheng sheathed his sword with a soft click, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. "I see," Ye Cheng replied, tilting his head as though considering the king's threat a curious joke. "You've been hiding behind rumors and reputations all this time. Very well. If your so-called backer won't show face, then neither shall you." The Heavenly King's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, the ground trembling beneath his weight of cultivation. "You dare," but Ye Cheng cut him off, voice low and deadly. "I dare, because I have no need for hidden patrons. My strength speaks for itself." At that moment, a tremor ran through the assembled disciples. The mountain air grew heavy, charged with latent power. The true Yang Heavenly King's confident facade wavered, his next words dying on his lips. He glanced around in panic. Gu Ye Cheng, what are you?" Ye Cheng's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "My backer," he murmured, "is right here." He flicked a single finger toward the king. A burst of radiant chi exploded outward, forging a brilliant arch of light that pinned the true Yang Heavenly King's golden aura in place. The king's triumphant energy splintered like glass under pressure. Shouts rose from the disciples, but they dared not act as the heavenly king staggered, eyes wide with disbelief. Ye Cheng's tone was almost polite. Is that enough to frighten you? The true Yang heavenly king could only stare, dumbfounded. He had come to challenge a boy he assumed powerless, only to discover the true power standing before him. And now, realization had left him utterly speechless. Chapter 169. A tense hush fell over Mount Luoyu. Dozens of cultivators watched in rapt silence as the once formidable true Yang heavenly king trembled before them. Not long ago, this was a man whose whim could snuff out lives. Now, in a single heartbeat, he'd been stripped of all pride. True Yang's usual arrogance crumbled into fear at Shen Yi Tianzun's words. To invoke someone whom even the towering Tianzun elders of the Tianshu Pavilion, the overlords of Qianyu, dared not confront. If such a power truly existed, how could he have allowed Yan Mengqi and the others to escape him so easily? Senior, you must be joking, right? The true Yang Heavenly King's voice quivered as he forced a servile smile. He tried to laugh it off, but Shen Yi Tianzun only returned a cold, implacable stare. He did not answer. Behind Shen Yi, the air thickened under the weight of the Heavenly Venerable's aura. It rose like a mountain, every second growing heavier, as though preparing to crush the true Yang Heavenly King outright. In that crushing stillness, the younger man felt a blade of murderous intent aimed squarely at him, and he knew, without a doubt, that he was utterly powerless. The true Yang Heavenly King's bravado finally crumbled. He dared not risk another lie, so clinging to a last thread of hope, he hurriedly named a Heavenly Venerable his father had once flattered. He, Luoshan Heavenly Venerable? Shen Yi's lips curled into a cold smile. That useless fool! I soundly defeated him 3 years ago, sent him fleeing, coughing up blood. His cultivation never recovered, so I spared him. You really think I'd be afraid of him? No sooner had the words died on his lips than Shen Yi raised his palm. A blinding surge of force struck the true Yang Heavenly King squarely, reducing him, and every Jinding sect disciple huddled behind him, to nothingness. A stunned hush fell over the remaining monks. Then, as they realized their greatest tormentor was gone, relief washed over them like a spring breeze. Kneeling, they bowed their heads, voices trembling with gratitude. Thank you, Heavenly Venerable Shen Yi, for saving us. Those who had been trapped and feared they'd never escape their fate now dared to hope again, their thanks ringing sincere and heartfelt. Ye Cheng and the others craned their necks to watch as Heavenly Venerable Shen Yi hovered serenely above them. One by one, they dropped into deep bows, their gratitude too profound for words. Heavenly Venerable Shen Yi smiled lightly and waved them to their feet. There's no need for such ceremony over a small matter, he said. As for the spirit herbs you gathered before, consider them null and void. From this point onward, I would like you to comb all of Luoyu Mountain for every last herb. He paused, letting his next words sink in. As a token of appreciation, you may keep 1/10 of everything you collect, excluding any spirit herb of 6th level or higher. Do I have your agreement? A thunderous chorus answered, Absolutely! We're honored. Faces flushed with excitement, the cultivators nodded eagerly. Many had already benefited from Heavenly Venerable Shen Yi's mercy and owed him their lives. He had every right to claim each rare herb on Luoyu Mountain for his own cultivation, yet here he was, forgiving their past trespasses and even rewarding them for their help. His generosity far surpassed that of the Zhenyang monarch. A voice rang out amid the crowd, trembling with reverence. Long live the Overlord sect. Tianshu Pavilion is, after all, part of the Overlord sect, and even the most powerful must know their limits. A murmur of admiration rippled through the gathering cultivators. None had ever seen such measured authority paired with such generosity. Shen Yi turned to Yan Mengqi with a kindly smile. As for you and your friends, by all means take whatever you like. You're not obliged to turn in any high-grade spirit medicines you find. However, if you should come across any 6th-tier herbs, please bring them to my pavilion master. He has a particular use for the right now. He paused, letting the invitation sink in. If he can make good use of them, I'm sure he can trade for other ingredients you might need. Yan Mengqi and her companions, Lan Ruoyun among them, quickly bowed. Thank you, Senior. Rest assured, if we find high-grade herbs, we'll bring them to you. We insist there's no need for any exchange fee, You saved our lives." "A very generous offer," Xianxia replied with a nod. At his words, Lan Ruoyun and the others felt their heads swim, much as Yan Mengqi herself had a moment before. This was a Tianzun, an existence their own fathers or ancestors could scarcely address. Yet here he was, treating them not as inferiors to be ordered about, but as friends to be protected. The cultivators exchanged awed glances. In all their years of following the Overlord sect's austere rules, they had never witnessed such gentle mastery of both power and humility. Lan Ruoyun pressed her palms together in a deep bow. "Because of Lord Shen's help in slaying Zhenyang Tianwang, we dare not ask for any further reward." "Thank you, Lord Shen!" The others echoed her words, each casting grateful looks at Yan Mengqi. Lan Ruoyun leaned closer and whispered, "Mengqi, if not for you, we never would have escaped alive." Yan Mengqi offered a shy smile under the weight of their gratitude. Before she could reply, Shenyi Tianzun's soft voice drifted over the group. "Miss Mengqi," he said, inclining his head, "this battlefield is treacherous even for those who know its secrets. I hesitate to let you venture on alone. If you stay with me a little longer, I can ensure you'll face no more harm." Relief warmed Yan Mengqi's chest. "Thank you, Senior." Shenyi Tianzun waved away her thanks with a gracious smile. "You owe me nothing. You're a dear friend of young Master Ye Cheng. Consider this done as a matter of family." With that, he settled onto his soaring sea of clouds and gestured for Yan Mengqi to join him. As they rose above the ancient battlefield's twisted stones and swirling mists, the rest of the group watched in awe, their thanks echoing on the wind. Ye Cheng cleared his mind and turned his attention back to the slopes of Luoyu Mountain, searching for rare spiritual herbs among the crags and crevices. Nearby, Yan Mengqi watched Shenyi Tianzun's graceful figure fade into the morning mist, her chest swelling with gratitude. She had never imagined that her seemingly random choice in the Xuanhuang secret realm would bring such a blessing. "If it weren't for Ye Cheng's fate protecting me, I might not have survived half the disasters I've faced," she whispered to herself. "Next time I see him, I'll be sure to thank him properly." Oblivious to the chaos roiling in the 10,000 demons pond below, Ye Cheng led Yunxi and Jian Rushuang deeper into the ancient battlefield. Their objectives were clear: unearth more priceless treasures and slay demons to earn merits, hone their skills, and accumulate precious combat experience. As they pressed onward, Yunxi and Jian Rushuang fanned out, each covering different sectors of the ruined field in search of demonic energy and hidden relics. Thanks to the sword talisman's keen sensing ability, Ye Cheng felt confident that no enemy could approach them unawares. Jian Rushuang's unshakable focus and Yunxi's lightning-fast reflexes meant they were more than prepared for any sudden attack. Still, an unspoken tension lingered in the air. The deeper they ventured into these time-worn battlegrounds, the greater the dangers that awaited them in the shadows. Even Yunxi and Jian Rushuang have both become strong enough to snuff out ordinary demons in an instant. Splitting up instead of fighting side by side means they clear enemies even faster. Yet despite their power, luck seems to have run dry. All the demons they've encountered so far are weak, and true opportunities have been scarce. Ye Cheng can't help but feel a flicker of disappointment. Then, without warning, a shuddering pulse of energy ripples through his mind, an overwhelming chaotic wrath rolling in from straight ahead. This isn't ordinary demonic residue, but the boundless madness born of countless fiends gathered in one place. He senses their numbers are vast and their strength considerable. There can be only one explanation. A major demon encampment lies just beyond the next ridge. Ye Cheng narrows his eyes. There's no trace of fear, only the thrill of battle rekindling in his chest. The long dormant spark within him flares to life, ready to face whatever horrors wait ahead. Chapter 170. Ye Cheng had already faced countless demons on his journey, but only a handful wielded King Realm power. In fact, amid the swirling, intricate auras around him, those King Realm fiends felt almost insignificant compared to the legions of God King demons, and a surprising number of Emperor-level abominations. A spark of interest lit Ye Cheng's eyes. "Very well," he muttered, and raised his hand. With that small gesture, he surged forward toward the most potent demonic aura. Jian Rushuang, Gu Yunxi, and Gu Qingchen immediately fell in beside him, each of them sensing the same overwhelming energy. Together, they raced across the scorched earth. Soon they reached the source, and found themselves face to face with a wave of panicked human cultivators charging straight at them. Dozens of men and women streamed past, terror etched into every line of their faces as they fled headlong from whatever horror lay behind. "Is that Emperor Lu Lingxuan?" someone gasped. "Have even the great emperors of the imperial realm failed?" Another voice croaked in disbelief. Jian Rushuang's eyes narrowed. Among the retreating cultivators, she recognized several proud emperors, leaders who, under normal circumstances, would have dispatched demons like flies. Yet here they were, broken and beaten, driven back by a threat far beyond their power. Ye Cheng slowed to a stop, scanning the horizon for the source of such overwhelming malice. Whatever waited ahead, it had already bested some of the realm's finest. Now it would have to contend with him. Despite their terror, they pressed on without a moment's hesitation. No one entertained the idea of stopping or turning to fight. The demon's formation alone was enough to chill the blood. Yet at the front, Ye Cheng strode forward as if the horde behind him were nothing more than a breeze. Jian Rushuang kept pace at his side, eyes alight with admiration. "With His Highness leading us, those demons don't stand a chance," he declared, and without a second thought, he charged after Ye Cheng, straight into the heart of the danger. The fleeing cultivators watched in stunned silence. Who on earth would run towards certain death while everyone else was desperate to escape? They recalled the demon army in hot pursuit, especially that terrifying vanguard demon, and shook their heads. Casting only a few disdainful glances at Ye Cheng's bold party, they turned back to their flight. A few even snickered, secretly pleased that these brave or foolish souls were charging directly into the oncoming storm. "They can only hold them off for a little while," one cultivator muttered. "Even at their best, they won't buy us much time. We still have to run for our lives." Around him, the others exchanged glances of pity and contempt as they watched Ye Cheng and his companions strike off upriver, directly into the oncoming demon horde. At last, a young female cultivator stepped forward, her voice clear and urgent. "Taoist Gu, don't go any further. On that bank you'll find transformed demons. Turn back while you still can." Her warning broke the tense silence, and several more voices joined in. "Please, little brother, don't be foolish," another called. "Those shape-shifting demons aren't to be underestimated. Your life is more important than pride." "Exactly," a third chimed in. "They prey on our weaknesses. You won't stand a chance up there." Ye Cheng paused at their calls, tilting his head so that the dim light played across his sharp features. "Shapeshifters?" he murmured, more curious than alarmed. A faint smile curled at the corner of his lips. While most demons were little more than mindless beasts, brutal but predictable, these creatures relied on deceit and cunning. That kind of challenge excited him. With steady calm, he turned back toward his companions. "They may be trickier opponents," he said, voice low but firm, "but we'll deal with them. Keep moving." Then, without another word, he led the way upriver, his confidence unwavering despite the demons waiting just ahead. Among the countless hordes of the F-demons, there exists a rare and fearsome breed, the shapeshifters. They arise in one of two ways. Some are born of royal demon blood, destined from birth to assume any form they wish. Others emerge naturally, an anomaly among anomalies. In a single demon breeding ground, millions upon millions of ordinary demons may be born before even one true shapeshifter appears. And once such a creature comes of age, the demon royal family seizes it without hesitation, drawing it into their own ranks. No one knows the demon's full numbers. Legends speak of nearly 10 billion that once poured into our realm of Shenzhou. Yet among that unfathomable mass, true shapeshifters number fewer than 100,000, a scarcity of 1 in 10,000, or perhaps 1 in a million. Each is a living arsenal of secret powers, a trump card that can turn the tide of any battle. Ordinary emperors pale in comparison. For Ye Cheng, however, these formidable foes are nothing more than perfect whetstones for his own strength. He offered the warning monks only a slight nod, enough to acknowledge their concern, and then pressed forward, undeterred. The monks who tried to stop him fell silent. The young woman who'd spoken first, her sharp warning still hung in the air, pressed her hand to her mouth, eyes wide with regret. She had only shouted because Ye Cheng was handsome and daring. She couldn't bear to watch him throw his life away. Now she realized her words carried no weight. Several junior disciples exchanged glances of frustration. One of them snapped, "Don't worry about him, sister. If he insists on rushing to his death, that's on him." Ye Cheng simply shrugged and strode on beside the female cultivator. But they hadn't gone 50 paces before grim-faced scouts returned with dire news. The demons behind them were gaining on them far faster than anyone had anticipated. "We won't outrun them," one shivered. A chorus of panicked voices rose. "Hide! Hurry! Find cover!" In that crisis, an aged emperor in their party, his hair as white as a moonbeam, clamped a hand to his chest and drew a beaten beast's skin from within his robes. Intricate Taoist sigils, faintly glowing, were carved into the hide. With a low incantation, he flung the skin to the ground. In an instant, the beast pelt erupted in roaring azure flames that coalesced into a dome of shifting light. Within its shimmering walls, every twig and boulder warped and twisted. Every scent and sound fell mute. The hunters pressed their faces against the barrier, powerless to breach the Emperor's trap. Ye Cheng and the others slipped inside the dome. Beneath its obscuring glow, they caught their breath, hearts pounding, safe, for the moment, from the darkness that prowled just beyond. Everyone exhaled at once, as if the worst had been averted. But their relief didn't last long. A swift wind stirred on the horizon, then another. At first, they thought the dreaded demon host had arrived, only to see a single wisp of energy approaching. A ripple of hope swept through the gathered cultivators. If only one demon were coming, maybe they could stand their ground. After all, they had fled in terror at the thought of being enveloped by the entire demon army, certain death even for Tianhuang's elite, let alone anyone else. But one lone foe? They could face that. Their optimism vanished the moment the second surge of power hit. A streak of dark purple light sliced through the sky, materializing into the figure of their pursuer. It truly was just one demon, but her presence eclipsed the strength of 1,000 warriors. Beneath the hidden cultivator's wide-eyed stares, the female demon descended with calm, unhurried grace. Ye Cheng could scarcely believe his eyes. Before him stood a demon in full transformation, towering nearly 10 feet tall, her figure impossibly statuesque. Her legs, straight and slender, measured almost 2 meters each, entirely bare, save for the intricate, swirling tattoos of her clan that traced every curve of her purple-red skin. A wild, savage beauty radiated from her, compounded by the way her long, dark purple hair, like strands of polished amethyst, fell in a shimmering curtain down to her hips. Her eyes burned a lavish crimson, as if carved from the finest jade, and faint, draconic horns curved back from her temples. No matter how she moved, a palpable aura of malevolence clung to her like a second skin. If it weren't for her massive stature and that demonic presence, one might have mistaken her for an exquisite female cultivator, a transformed demon, truly unlike any ordinary fiend, Ye Cheng murmured, awe and caution warring in his gaze. From her vantage point, he looked no bigger than a garden statue, an odd contrast of his human sword cultivator's poise and her overwhelming, inhuman power. Across the small distance between them, she met his eyes with equal parts curiosity and wariness, as though neither of them quite knew what to make of the other. Just from his physique alone, the contrast was startling. Even more remarkable was the aura pulsing around him, a pressure on par with a Xuanhuang realm cultivator. The human fighters nearby quailed under its weight, scattering in outright panic. Yet this lone man, Ye Cheng, didn't flee. He held his ground. To the watching demons, his striking handsomeness only deepened the enigma. Zimei, newly arrived on the ancient battlefield, couldn't tear her gaze away from him. Curiosity flared in her eyes as she called out, "Why aren't you running away?" Chapter 171, The Demon Royal Stirs. A blood-red mist clung to the craggy peaks, twisting around jagged rocks like living things. In its depths stood a single figure, Zimei, a transformed demon of royal blood. Even among demons, her kind were feared for the raw power they could unleash. Blessed by an unmatched physique and ancient techniques reserved only for the demon royalty, Zimei's might far outstripped her Xuanhuang stage peers. Any mortal who challenged her here would vanish without a trace, their fate sealed before they felt the first blow. Yet the newcomer before her remained utterly calm. Ye Cheng, the sword cultivator, looked no older than 16. His slender frame, wind-battered robes, and the simple longsword at his hip belied any real threat. Still he met Zime's crimson gaze without a flicker of fear. A faint breeze ruffled his dark hair, but his posture held steady, as if he stood on familiar ground. Zime narrowed her eyes. She traced the energy radiating off him. Unusual, yes, but hardly devastating. What strength could this boy possibly wield? To stay and fight was suicide. By rights, he should have fled the moment he sensed her presence. Why should I run? Ye Cheng's voice was quiet, matter-of-fact, carrying a confidence that both intrigued and irritated her. Zime tilted her head. A soft, almost musical chuckle escaped her lips. You really think you can win? Amusing. Her words, laced with disdain, hung in the air like a challenge. The ground beneath them rumbled as dormant energies stirred in response to her royal bloodline. Wisps of scarlet chi coiled around her limbs, and her claws lengthened, glinting in the dim light. Still, Ye Cheng said nothing more. He drew his sword with a single fluid motion. Steel sang through the air, its blade reflecting the crimson glow of the demon's aura. An instant later, the world shattered in a flash of light and sound as man and demon sprang at each other. Two wills set on collision, each certain of victory. Ye Cheng stood his ground, unflinching. The humans and the demons are sworn enemies. When we meet, it's kill or be killed. A murmur ran through the hidden monks watching from the shadows. To them, Ye Cheng looked less like a warrior than a fool. Boldness without sense. One of the monks sneered, "He's just a reckless brat. Too bad he's not handsome enough to be worth saving." Before the monk could finish, a clear voice rang out from across the clearing. "Impressive courage. I admire it." Demon Lord Zime stepped into the open, her eyes fixed on Ye Cheng. "Surrender yourself to me. Serve as my attendant, and I'll spare your life." The monks exchanged startled glances. They'd been certain this transformed demon would slaughter Ye Cheng without hesitation. She'd shown no mercy chasing them just moments ago. What kind of demon offered a human a chance to live? Their hearts pounded as doubt replaced their confidence. Zime, who once pursued them like a storm, now stood calmly, extending an unexpected offer of mercy. Ye Cheng couldn't believe his ears. Zime was actually offering to spare his life, on the condition that he become her personal attendant? The inequality of it all riled the surrounding monks, but Ye Cheng simply tilted his head and let a lazy smile curl his lips. "Your manservant?" he echoed, amusement dancing in his dark eyes. "Tell me, do you even deserve someone like me at your side?" Zime's composed mask cracked, a cold spark flared in her gaze. "Don't get too full of yourself, brat." "Full of myself?" Ye Cheng drawled. In one smooth motion, he lifted his hand. The scabbard of his spirit sword clanged as the blade slid free, its pale light extending steadily toward Zime. "Why don't you try taking my sword first? If you can manage that, I'll think about accepting your proposal." A flash of anger crossed Zime's face. "How dare you?" she hissed, and, with a sudden roar, unleashed a palm strike, crackling with energy. Ye Cheng met her assault with serene confidence. The sword's glow pulsating as the two forces led toward collision. In that moment, neither threatened surrender. Only the dance of power and pride remained. Boom! Under Zime's command, a titanic wave of spiritual energy coalesced in midair, instantly forming a colossal, pitch-black dragon claw. It plummeted from the 9-day sea of clouds, wreathed in an aura of pure death. Wherever the claw sliced through the sky, the void split open in jagged cracks. The sheer force of its spiritual fluctuations sent shivers through every onlooker. If that claw struck its mark, not even an emperor-level cultivator or a god-emperor could escape severe injury. The transformed demon, it's terrifying. Hidden among the trees, human cultivators watched in horror and disbelief. Despite Ye Cheng's reckless reputation, they all shared the same bloodline. Seeing him face certain annihilation at the demon's hands filled them with helpless dread, especially the women, whose eyes brightened with unshed tears. In that desperate moment, clang! Ye Cheng's spirit sword met the descending claw head-on. An earth-shaking shockwave ripped through the battlefield, sending fragments of cloud and rock spiraling into the void. Smoke and embers twisted around the repelled claw as it recoiled from the might of Ye Cheng's counterstrike. Through the haze, his determined silhouette stood firm. His azure eyes burned with unwavering resolve. and his sword hummed like a living thing. Though the enemy's power was overwhelming, Ye Cheng refused to yield. The legend of this battle was just beginning. The brilliant sword light tore through the sky like a fracture between heaven and earth. When Zimei caught sight of it, her pupils pinched to pinpoints. She let out a strangled cry and, without a second's hesitation, unleashed her ultimate life-saving secret art. Bang! A cloud of thick crimson mist burst from her very bones, instantly shrouding her in a veil of blood-red fog. In the next heartbeat, her body dissolved into a streak of light, shooting away like a meteor burning across the night. Hidden among the trees, the monks gaped in stunned silence. "What just happened?" one of them murmured. "Isn't her dragon claw technique broken?" another whispered. Ye Cheng's sword had been vast and unstoppable, yet Zimei's black dragon claw, wrought from her own spiritual power, proved equally deadly. Before either could land a decisive blow, she tapped into her life-saving art and vanished, wounded but alive. The monks were still reeling from her escape when a sudden crack, sharp as shattering glass, split the air above them. All heads jerked upward, hearts pounding. Something new was coming, something none of them had expected. Under the stunned gazes of the onlookers, Ye Cheng's blade of pure, radiant light cleaved the ink-black dragon claw in two. Before anyone could react, that same gleaming sword stroke swept onward and cut through the swirling scarlet mist Zimei had summoned as her last-ditch life-saving gambit. In a heartbeat, both claw and blood mist lay obliterated on the ground. Zimei's desperate plan had been to delay Ye Cheng long enough to vanish, but her reaction was just a fraction too slow. Even her most potent secret technique couldn't withstand the speed and force of his attack. Had she not retreated at the very instant she did, she would have fallen by his sword. "It seems the metamorphosed demon's reflexes are sharper than I expected," Ye Cheng remarked, easing his hand and letting the sword light fade. He turned his cool gaze toward Zimei as she fled, a playful spark dancing in his eyes. He hadn't finished her off, but the wounds he'd inflicted were deep, and the message was clear. That crimson blood mist phantom was astonishingly resilient, so tough that even the Emperor's mightiest giants couldn't shatter or banish it. Whenever it dispersed, it simply reformed out of the void and returned to its mistress. With such a safeguard, Zimei could suffer losses on the battlefield without fear of lasting harm. But today, she faced Ye Cheng. In an instant, his bay laid flared with a blinding light. Every tendril of her blood mist phantom shattered where it floated, no reforming, no return. Ye Cheng watched the last wisp of crimson vanish, and a chill certainty crossed his mind. This transformed demon would think twice before raising havoc on the ancient battlefield again. His face remained composed, but the hidden monks, those who had crept into the shadows to witness the clash, could hardly contain their amazement. "That shape-shifting demon, defeated just like that?" one of them breathed, voice trembling with wonder. Chapter 172. Are we dreaming? Did she really fall that easily? Hidden in the shadows, the human cultivators stared in stunned silence. When Zimei had struck earlier, her demonic horde hadn't given them a single opening. She dominated the field all by herself. Even those among the human side who had reached the Emperor realm had united to attack her, only to be routed in humiliating defeat. That was why everyone had turned tail and run, utterly paralyzed at the thought of resisting. And now that living nightmare lay vanquished by a single sword stroke from Ye Cheng. One blow had shattered an Emperor realm powerhouse, quite possibly someone who'd been flirting with the Queen realm of the heavenly domain, driven to burn her own blood to save her life. What level of strength must that be? Emperor's son caliber? Even the princes and elite disciples nurtured within the imperial court would struggle to match the sheer power Ye Cheng had just unleashed. A tremor of exhilaration ran through every onlooker. For the first time, they dared to hope. Those who had once laughed at Ye Cheng now stood in embarrassed silence. "We called this sword cultivator a fool, a lunatic," one murmured, head hanging. "But now, we were blind with pride," another admitted softly. Around them, cultivators nodded in agreement, sympathy replacing their earlier mockery. Meanwhile, in a remote valley scarred by ancient battles, a streak of iridescent light tore through the gloom. There stood Zimei, trembling and stained with her own burning blood, the price she'd paid to escape. The arrogance that had once defined her was gone, replaced by raw fear and disbelief. Behind her eyelids, the after-image of Ye Cheng's sword flashed relentlessly, a blade of such blistering brilliance it felt like the sun itself. Her heart pounded so fiercely she could hardly catch her breath. "I was so close, just a moment more, and I'd be dead," Zimei whispered, voice shaking. How could a cultivator of merely the Xuanhuang realm unleash such overwhelming power? Her mind spun as she recalled that final blinding slash. When Ye Cheng had struck, the sword light had cut through every defense. There was no doubt in her mind who wielded it. The killing intent in that attack had been beyond anything an Emperor Realm cultivator could normally unleash. Now, recalling it, Zimei felt her heart pound so fiercely she could hardly steady herself. "Thank heavens I prepared ahead of time," she murmured, pressing a gloved hand over her chest. "Before entering the ancient battlefield, I siphoned off part of my life force and blood to form that death substitution mist. Without it, I really would have died." A dull ache tugged at her heart as she thought of the precious mist. Although it could regenerate on its own, it took at least a month, and every use cost her dearly. This last battle had consumed a full third of her stock. Her reflections were cut short by a sudden, searing pain in her spirit sea. Her limbs spasmed uncontrollably, and she let out a strangled scream. "Ah!" Zimei coughed up a mouthful of blood. For a moment she ignored her physical injuries, focusing instead on the turmoil raging within her spirit sea. Shock and anguish clouded her eyes as she probed the damage, uncertain how much of herself she'd lost this time. In the depths of her consciousness, Zimei watched in horror as the red talisman, her greatest trump card, painstakingly refined with her own blood and essence to summon the life-saving blood mist of death, shattered under a sudden, searing pain. It cracked into countless fragments of spiritual debris and dispersed like smoke. The one defense she'd spent so much of herself to forge was gone, reduced to nothing. "How? How is this possible?" she gasped, her heart pounding so fiercely she could hardly draw breath. Then a darker realization gripped her. The blood mist of death was legendary for its resilience. Even a divine emperor-ranked powerhouse of the human race might struggle to dispel it. Yet it was destroyed. That meant the prodigy who struck her, Ye Cheng, must have reached or even surpassed divine emperor level. A monster. A peerless, dreadful monster. Zimei's heart pounded as waves of shock crashed through her mind. In the demon clan, a transformed demon's power so far exceeds that of a human cultivator that on equal footing no mortal can prevail. Zimei always believed that if she were ever defeated, it would be by another rising demon prodigy, not by a human genius. Yet here she was, having just been bested by Ye Cheng. There was no time to linger on her disbelief. Ye Cheng's strength had shattered her expectations, and her death blood mist, so completely that she had to warn the Heavenly Demon Clan's leaders immediately. Perhaps he hadn't relied on raw power alone. Maybe he'd employed some hidden trump card, or even had other human heavy hitters backing him up. But whatever the case, his combat display was more than enough to threaten or even destroy someone of her caliber. That was a threat the clan could not ignore. Thank goodness she'd committed every detail of Ye Cheng's appearance to memory. Now, Zimei just needed to flee, regroup, and deliver her urgent report. Zimei pressed her bleeding side and thought, if I don't warn the demon lords and plan for Ye Cheng now, once he comes into his power, he'll be a calamity for our side. Determined, she swallowed the pain, drew upon the clan's secret teleportation art, and vanished. When she reappeared, she stood amid the deepest ruins of the ancient battlefield, just outside the old, sealed passage. Centuries of decay had cracked its stone arch, turning it into a rendezvous point for demons who'd mastered the human guise. Here, the clan's covert stronghold had taken shape. At the sight of her, dozens of these shapeshifters dropped to one knee and bowed in unison. "Miss Zimei," they intoned, voices echoing off the broken monuments. In the demon hierarchy, any member who fully completed the transformation ranks as royal, but distinctions still apply. Among them, a true cross-realm warrior like Zimei stands alone at the very pinnacle. Ye Cheng's reputation among the transformed demons was unrivaled, on par with the princes and princesses of the great imperial sects. Yet he had no time to acknowledge the onlookers. After a curt nod and a passing greeting, he pressed onward toward the heart of the battlefield. There, dominating the clearing, loomed a jet-black fortress. Its jagged towers and shadow-clad walls bristled with arcane runes, intricate, beautiful, and foreboding. The arrays coiled around the fortress like a living thing, warding off intruders and safeguarding whatever lay inside. It was less a stronghold than a colossal spiritual weapon, its very presence priceless. All of the demon clan's highest-ranking prodigies who had entered this forsaken arena were gathered within. As Ye Cheng reached the fortress gate, a sudden breeze swept through, stirring the runic patterns until they seemed to hum with power. Then, from a distance, shafts of light cut through the gloom, each beam heralding the arrival of another demon heir. In moments, half a dozen emerged, their forms both proud and savage. The men stood broad-shouldered and fierce, the women tall, beautiful, and untamed. One of the female demons, her eyes glinting with amusement, stepped forward as she caught sight of Ye Cheng. She spread her arms theatrically. Well, if it isn't Brother Ye Cheng," she mocked. "You look spent. Come back injured, have you?" Another snorted. "I'd have never guessed our prodigy would stumble so badly." Ye Cheng stopped a few paces from them, his expression cool. He didn't flinch under their taunts. After all, these were rivals who delighted in his misfortune. Straightening his shoulders, he met their laughter with steady eyes, ready for whatever challenge lay ahead. "I'd be happy to help. Please go ahead and paste the full chapter you'd like me to revise, and I'll craft it into a polished, idiomatic English version with Ye Cheng as the male lead." Chapter 173. Xianxia, a fiery young demoness, had always been at odds with Zimei. Spotting Zimei's unsteady aura, she couldn't resist sneering. "Zimei, have you been messing around with humans again? You look worse for wear." Nearby demons, who held no personal grudge against Zimei, merely watched with curiosity. Another demoness gently waved off Yue's taunt and stepped forward, concern etched on her face. "Zimei, what happened? Were you attacked by one of the human powerhouses?" Among the transformed demons, Zimei's strength was remarkable, so much so that injuries were rare for her. She sighed and, with no hint of shame, nodded. "I'm hurt, but not by those human elites. I lost to a human prodigy, Ye Cheng." At that name, the gathered demon prodigies grew solemn. "Ye Cheng?" one muttered. "That young man is extraordinarily powerful," Zimei continued, voice steady despite her pain. "He's ruthless too. We need to alert Mozu immediately." "Right," said the concerned demoness. "He's waiting on the third floor of the castle. Let's go, now." Zimei drew herself up, bracing against the ache in her side. Surrounded by her allies, she moved toward the staircase, determination shining in her eyes. There was no turning back. Xianxia bristled at the implication, unwilling to let it pass. A human prodigy? As if the mortals could produce anyone worth noting. Zimei met her scorn with a steady gaze. "Not long ago, he felled one of the Yushan Emperor sect's princes in a single move. You thought that prince was strong, yet he couldn't even withstand Ye Cheng's blade." Xianxia laughed derisively. "Really? You expect me to believe you're the only one thwarted by a human tactic? You're just grasping at straws, dredging up this prodigy to excuse your defeat." Zimei said nothing further. With a final, icy look, she turned on her heel and strode away. There was no point arguing, and with Ye Cheng's talent, his name would soon echo across the ancient battlefield. Then Xianxia would learn just how grave the situation had become. Without pausing, Zimei made her way into the fortress's inner courtyard and sought out the Heavenly Demon Clan's senior leader. Bursting into his chamber, she reported urgently, "My lord, there is indeed a human genius, a swordsman clad in white. We don't even know his name, but his blade laid our warrior low with a single stroke." The Grand Elder of the Heavenly Demon Clan's brow darkened. "Very well. I'll alert every division. The instant they spot him, keep your eyes locked on him and pick him off from a distance." "Yes," Zimei replied crisply, bowing low. Relief gleamed in her eyes. With the entire demon force alert and ready to strike, the swordsman in white would have no chance to slip away from this ancient battlefield. His death was all but certain. And yet, for a heartbeat, Zimei found herself hesitating. She'd heard tales of this young warrior's extraordinary skill, but she'd never seen his face until now. Handsome, regal, almost otherworldly. The thought made her chest tighten. She shook herself, banishing the doubt. Mozu's decree was absolute. Every transformed demon must converge upon Ye Cheng and crush him. There would be no mercy, no escape. Surrounded on all sides, Zime whispered, already picturing the net closing in. At that precise moment, Ye Cheng felt a familiar pulse of power within the ancient ring. Empress Fufeng's voice echoed in his mind, grave and urgent. Be on guard. Don't underestimate their methods. Her tone was sterner than he'd ever heard. Until now, she'd dismissed the demons as nothing more than common brutes, but this warning made clear just how dangerous they could be. Ye Cheng hadn't expected that actual Dao Zun-level masters would be among the demons who returned to this ancient battlefield. And not just one, but several. Nor had the Sky Demon clan foreseen that he'd brought along the remnant soul of an empress. Even in its incomplete form, Empress Fufeng had once been an empress-level powerhouse, and Ye Cheng's elixirs had further strengthened. Her divine consciousness now radiated far beyond anything the Sky Demons had ever encountered here. The moment the clan's high-ranking leaders issued their orders, Empress Fufeng intercepted their intent and warned Ye Cheng without hesitation. The Sky Demon leadership has you in their sights. They'll throw everything they have at you, surround and overwhelm you at once. Ye Cheng smiled calmly. Is that so? Let them come. This is exactly the moment I've been waiting for, the perfect moment for my sword sacrifice. He had anticipated nothing less. Ye Cheng knew it was only a matter of time before the high-ranking Sky Demons on the ancient battlefield noticed his kills and came after him. That much was inevitable. He froze when Empress Fufeng's voice drifted to him from behind. I thought the same at first, she said coolly, but they've actually issued 2 orders, she went on. 1, dispatch their most talented transformed demons and even the veteran old demons to hunt you down. 2, warn every lone transformed demon, if you ever encounter him one-on-one, you must flee immediately. They aren't giving you a single opening to strike. Ye Cheng rubbed his temples, fighting off a headache. Shameless, he muttered. What happened to that proud purple charmer? To him, each Sky Demon he felled was more than practice. It was currency. Every transformed demon he defeated earned merit points he could trade at the great sects of the 3,000 realms for rare spiritual medicines. With those precious herbs and elixirs, he'd finally be able to accelerate Empress Fufeng's resurrection. Ye Cheng frowned. If the demons scattered at the sight of him, he'd be powerless to stop their escape. After all, his cultivation had only reached the venerable stage. According to Empress Fufeng's intelligence, the Heavenly Demon clan still boasted not only the ancient demon ancestor, already at Dao Venerable, but also a host of elder demons at Heavenly Venerable, and even a few at Saint Venerable. Should they decide to strike en masse, Ye Cheng's only recourse would be to unleash the Heavenly Refining God puppet. But that puppet's activations were limited. Once its magic was spent, it would revert to a mere heavenly demon, just another creature destined to flee before him. He'd be forced to burn through his trump card again and again, each time inching closer to total exhaustion. The realization left him with a thudding headache. Just then, Ye Cheng caught the gleam of amusement on Empress Fufeng's spectral face, trapped within the ancient ring. She looked positively delighted by his predicament, as if she were watching a drama unfold. Ye Cheng paused, considering the warning Empress Fufeng had given him. He had a feeling she'd already prepared a contingency she'd been waiting for him to ask. But he wasn't about to throw in the towel. A solution at last presented itself. This was my oversight, he said quietly, but now that the Heavenly Demon clan has marked me, I have no choice but to withdraw from the ancient battlefield. Empress Fufeng blinked in surprise. Withdraw? But the Heavenly Demon clan is no walk in the park. I know, he interrupted. They're formidable opponents. Still, we can't stay here. I'll come back later to search for the spirit herbs and medicines I revived. She glanced at him, incredulous. You're seriously leaving now? What about all those precious herbs? I'll retrieve them on my next attempt, he replied. Your warning came too late. My own fault for not spotting the gap earlier. Next time, you'll have to warn me sooner. That makes sense. But wait, isn't that really your own mistake? Empress Fufeng's composure finally cracked when she saw him gathering his things. She threw her hands up. Fine, I give up. Please, don't go. I have a solution, a way to help you resolve this. At those words, Empress Fufeng dropped all pretense of secrecy. In a sudden flare of ethereal light, her fragmented soul coalesced into a brilliant beam and poured itself into the space between Ye Cheng's brows. Ye Cheng felt a ripple through his consciousness as he opened his mind to her divine message. He concentrated, carefully decoding every nuance. Moments later, his eyes sparkled with astonishment. Incredible, he breathed. Even as a mere remnant, her soul still wields such power. No wonder she truly is the reincarnation of an immortal. Chapter 174. The moment the secret dispatch from Empress Fufeng imprinted itself on Ye Cheng's forehead, he sensed the presence of a powerful disguise technique. This was no mere mortal art. It hailed from the fairy realm, on par with true celestial magic. Though Ye Cheng was currently only at the Heavenly Emperor level, this technique would allow him to transmogrify his visage so completely that even a 1000-level heavenly demon would struggle to see through it unless standing immediately beside him. Best of all, the method was surprisingly straightforward to cultivate. Thanks to Ye Cheng's exceptional aptitude, he required only a brief study session before beginning his practice, and in remarkably short order, he mastered it to a high degree. Whoosh! With a single thought, Ye Cheng triggered the transformation. His refined features softened, his attire and bearing shifting to something simpler yet equally graceful. Dressed in flowing white robes, he now carried himself with the placid elegance of bamboo swaying in a breeze. Most striking of all were his eyes, deep, fathomless pools that seemed to shimmer with a galaxy of hidden stars, an unintended side effect of channeling the fairy technique. Standing before the mirror, Ye Cheng gave a faint nod to his new reflection. This disguise would serve him well in the trials to come. When onlookers caught sight of them, they couldn't help but stare and murmur in awe. How is this boy getting more and more extraordinary? Even the true immortals and immortal kings of the spirit realm don't hold a candle to him. Empress Fufeng's heart trembled at the display. Nearby, Jian Rushuang and the Yunxi siblings had just arrived, and froze the instant they set eyes on Ye Cheng. Only when he smiled and greeted them did they dare believe that this was truly their father. "Daddy, why do you look so different?" Gu Qingchen blurted out, eyes wide. Ye Cheng grinned. "This is a little illusion I've mastered. What do you think? Did I fool you?" "Amazing." Qingchen's face lit up. "I want to learn it too." Beside him, Gu Yunxi was quieter, but her large eyes sparkled with curiosity. "All right," Ye Cheng chuckled, ruffling his children's hair. "I'll teach you both this trick. When you reach the Imperial Realm, Father will teach you this spell." Ye Cheng smiled gently and ruffled his daughter's hair. "Yunxi, you practice just as hard. Once you both enter the Imperial Realm, I'll teach you even more powerful techniques and some truly fascinating magic." "Okay, Father." Gu Yunxi answered eagerly, her eyes shining with determination. After comforting his two little ones, Ye Cheng turned his attention to Jian Rushuang, who had just arrived. She stood before him clutching a jade communication talisman, her expression unusually serious. Concern flickered across his features. "Rushuang, have you received any important news?" Jian Rushuang nodded briskly. "Yes, Your Highness. My sect reports that the human demon platform has appeared." A flash of excitement lit Ye Cheng's eyes as his brow tightened. The human demon platform, a legendary battle arena that had surfaced in this region long before the ancient battlefield ruins, had finally made its return. A momentous opportunity lay ahead. They call it the human demon platform, but its true name is the Two Worlds platform. It is an arena that links the demon realm with the human world, where prodigies from both planes do battle. Only those under 100 years of age may compete, and the platform maintains a strict ranking of 100 spots. Whenever a young genius secures a place among the top 100, they can project a spiritual avatar onto the platform at the rank they've earned, and by doing so, they invoke the heavenly Tao's blessing back in their own world. The higher the rank, the greater the reward. Treasures of mortal kings, legendary armaments, even fragments of divine techniques. While the ultimate honor is to claim first place, simply landing in the 30th or 50th tier is enough to draw down the heavenly Tao's favor and receive supreme relics. Throughout the history of the 3,000 realms, countless human prodigies have stamped their names upon this platform. Many have returned bearing emperor-level skills and unparalleled arcane powers, their feats becoming the stuff of legend. Under normal circumstances, the human-demon platform only appears once every few hundred or even 1,000 years, and that only when the ancient battlefield is on the verge of closing. Yet today, it had manifested unusually early. The appearance of the human-demon platform means that countless powerful cultivators from the Heavenly Demon clan have breached the ancient battlefield and met the requirements to summon it. Jian Rushuang's heart tightened at the news. Beside her, however, Ye Cheng remained perfectly composed, as if he'd foreseen this exact moment. He glanced at the darkening sky, where ripples of energy were already gathering. By my reckoning, it was due any moment now, he said with a faint, confident smile. Jian Rushuang stared at him, surprised by his calm. Ye Cheng merely nodded. Empress Fufeng had warned him that the Heavenly Demon clan now counted several dozen Perfection Realm masters among its ranks. With such titans involved, an early summoning of the platform was hardly shocking. Rising to his full height, Ye Cheng turned to Jian Rushuang. Do you know where the nearest human-demon platform has taken form? As soon as the platform appears, it never confines itself to a single location, and everywhere it manifests, the next great clash is about to begin. Projections began to materialize across the ancient battlefield, marking the challenge sites where champions from both realms would face off. Jian Rushuang had no time to hesitate. It's near Longyuan Mountain, he called out. Longyuan Mountain was another key landmark on this battlefield, and only a few days' journey from their current position. Ye Cheng nodded, quickly pinpointed it on his map, and without a moment's delay set off with Jian Rushuang and Yun Shi toward the human-demon platform. A few days later, they arrived at the foot of Longyuan Mountain to find countless human cultivators already gathered around an immense arena that had just appeared. Towering above them was the 10,000-foot battle platform, its sheer scale both awe-inspiring and incomparable. The vast structure was neatly divided into 100 smaller platforms, and upon each one stood a majestic projection, spectral likenesses of the greatest geniuses from past dynasties, each immortalized on this legendary human-demon platform. Above the human-demon platform, a towering projection shimmered into view, instantly drawing the attention of every cultivator gathered at Longyuan Mountain. One by one, they fell silent, eyes fixed on the list of the 100 geniuses. But as the names and ranks appeared, a heavy gloom settled over the human contingent. Of the 100 honored slots, only a dozen were claimed by human prodigies. The very best among them hovered just outside the top 30. Every position above 30 was monopolized by the transformed Xianxia of the Heavenly Demon clan. 30 places, and not a single human face among them. This is unbearable, whispered one cultivator, his voice trembling with suppressed fury. The Emperor-ranked demons are simply too powerful. In the same realm and generation, our human geniuses have been left in the dust. Around him, others nodded in grim agreement. Though they had heard the living fossils recount the ancient wars and the heroes who fell defending humanity, nothing in their stories had prepared these young Tianjiao, the first to set foot on this stage, for such a crushing display of inferiority. It's one thing to know our ancestors sacrificed everything, another murmured, but it's another to see with your own eyes how far we've fallen. Murmurs of dismay rippled through the assembly. Many felt their hearts constrict at the sight, an image of human hope flickering, then dimming, under the relentless advance of demonic might. Yet even as despair threatened to overwhelm them, a few determined faces remained, steeled by ancestral legacy. If their forebears had died fighting against the odds, then so too would they stand and fight, no matter how daunting the enemy ranks might be. They had heard whispers of the Heavenly Demon clan's power, but none truly grasped its magnitude. After all, on the way here they'd slain countless lesser demons, grotesque creatures that couldn't even assume human form. They'd laughed at such heavenly demons, convinced they were nothing more than malformed beasts. But now, as Ye Cheng, a prodigious young cultivator of the human race, lay broken on the human-demon stage, every shred of arrogance vanished. A chilling awe settled over the spectators. "Is this the true might of a transformed heavenly demon?" they whispered. "And yet our sages defeated such a terror, and cast him back to the original world. Across the crowd, fists clenched in reverence for those great sages. Respect burned in their hearts, but so did unease. The Heavenly Demon Clan had been driven from their realm, not destroyed, and that alone was enough to weigh heavily on every young genius present. Each year, the seals on the ancient battlefield weaken a little more. If the Heavenly Demon Clan ever returns, who and what will stand against them? Chapter 175. A heavy silence fell over the gathered human prodigies. Ye Cheng lifted an eyebrow, the weight of the Demon Clan's power pressing in on him. He couldn't help but think, how on earth did our ancestors ever defeat such a foe? Their courage and strategy must have been beyond compare. It wasn't just their ultimate sacrifice on the battlefield that moved him. Even the stirring sermon delivered in the buried sword gorge spoke volumes of their resolve. No matter how far time had carried them, Ye Cheng felt nothing but profound respect for those who'd come before. His gaze drifted to the 32nd contender on the human-demon platform, the greatest prodigy among all assembled. In life, this hero had perfected the Xuan Emperor's realm, a feat so rare that few could rival it. With such talent, he might easily have risen to the Heavenly Emperor level, or even transcended it. Yet, when Shenzhou faced annihilation, he threw himself into the fray without hesitation, giving his life to safeguard the world he loved. Now, as the projection of ancient demons advanced toward the stage where the human sage stood, Ye Cheng's eyes hardened. He drew in a steady breath, determined to honor his forebears by standing firm against this new threat. Ye Cheng glanced at the floating ranks before him, took a steady breath, and whispered to himself, "This time, I'll take it out on the sages." He'd already made up his mind. The human demon stage allowed unlimited attempts. After defeating an opponent, a challenger could refuse the exit reward and press on. That meant his next match would begin at 31st place, and he intended to sweep every demon sage standing above him. One by one, he would topple them all and clear the path for humanity's true champions. As that bold plan flickered through his mind, elsewhere on the ancient battlefield, another human demon stage crackled with power. A cluster of prodigies from the Tianmo clan had gathered, eyes ablaze with competitive fire as they eyed the glowing platform. Among them stood Zimei and Yueya, two of the clan's brightest, each eager to prove herself. Zimei's face was grave. She'd witnessed Ye Cheng's skills firsthand and no longer underestimated the humans. She knew well that if anyone could carve a path straight to the summit, it was that quiet, unassuming youth. But most of the other Tianmo prodigies, Yueya included, shrugged off Zimei's warnings. To them, tales of a human prodigy were just stories, easily dismissed until proven true. Yet as the hum of energy from the stage pulsated across the field, even the skeptics found themselves leaning forward. Whether they believed the rumors or not, none could ignore the gathering storm of challenges poised to erupt, and the name at its center, Ye Cheng. Yueya's taunts rang out sharp and clear, and the Tianmo clan's elite seized on them eagerly. They were convinced that Zimei had been outwitted by some human scheme, and, to save face, was desperately inventing a human prodigy who didn't even exist. Their pitying, skeptical gazes bored into her. Zimei felt the sting of their contempt, but she kept her temper in check. Inwardly, she reminded herself of Ye Cheng's astonishing talent and strength. A quiet confidence glimmered in her eyes. "Just you wait," she vowed silently. "When that human genius steps forward, you'll see his true power, and you'll know that I never lied." On the other side of the arena, Yueya's eyes swept over the 10 or so human contenders gathered on the human demon stage. She curled her lip in disdain. "The human demon stage," she scoffed. "It soon won't be theirs at all." A nearby heavenly demon genius, brimming with zeal, raised his voice to match hers. "After today, we'll claim this stage for ourselves. We'll turn the human demon stage into the heavenly demon stage and drive every last human off it." Yueya's smile grew colder still, her arrogance shining brighter than ever. The challenge had been laid down, and everyone in the arena sensed that the real battle was only just beginning. Chapter 6, a challenge issued. Yueya's lips curled into a mocking smile as she glanced at Zimei. "What's so impressive about mere mortals?" she taunted. "My goal isn't some ordinary contender. It's the greatest geniuses in our heavenly demon clan's history. I won't even pretend I can leap into the top 20, but I'll gladly set my sights on the top 30. Her proclamation ignited a spark among the gathered prodigies. Whispers and nods circulated in excited confidence. None of them truly believed they could topple the legendary top 10. Those titans ruled at the exalted Xuanhuang level, but most were certain they could rival or even outmatch a divine emperor. Zimei, however, remained unmoved. These ambitious youths, brimming with self-assurance, struck her as utterly outclassed by Ye Cheng. Even the current generation's princes and princesses of the Heavenly Demon Clan failed to project the same crushing presence. Beside him, they were all mere pretenders. A ripple of excitement passed through the assembled demons. If that person shows up to challenge the human demon platform too, one of them whispered, his voice low with awe. He'd break into the top 10 without even trying, another scoffed. No demon, not even the Tianmo clan's princes, stands a chance against him. Indeed, compared to the 10 greatest demons in history, even the Heavenly Demon Clan's current first and second princes, formidable as they were, fell short. Those 10 legends were embodiments of absolute power. Until now, no one had dared to rival them. Yet the rumors about the human side's white-robed swordsman were impossible to ignore. His strength was said to be on par with the first demon lord, and perhaps even beyond. Zimei felt her pulse quicken. Could such a mortal truly hold his own against the demon's finest? She fought to steady her racing thoughts. Just then, the great platform at the center of the arena began to hum and tremble, drawing every eye. Under the demon's stunned gazes, the 100th contender, a young demon warrior, stepped forward. But alongside him, rising like mist under a moonlit sky, was another figure, a projection of a human youth. Despite his slender frame, the projection radiated an unearthly resolve. Whispers swelled through the crowd. This was Ye Cheng, the human prodigy destined to upend the balance between mortals and demons. At the demon stages, a handful of human prodigies could no longer sit still. One after another, they strode forward, determined to test their strength against the phantom demons that prowled the human demon platform. Below Longyuan Mountain, a cluster of onlookers from the human realm watched with bated breath. Suddenly, one of them pointed and cried out, "That's Ye Cheng, current emperor of the Tianhai sect. Word is he's broken through to the late Xuanhuang realm. His might is legendary. Most emperors can't hold a candle to him." "Most emperors?" another echoed excitedly. "Then he's bound to dominate today's rankings, right?" Their faces lit up with expectation. But no sooner had hope flared in their eyes than it was snuffed out. Before them, Ye Cheng, their greatest champion, fell decisively to the demon genius ranked a full 100th in the demon hierarchy. In an instant, all their dreams of an upset vanished like mist. After barely 5 exchanges, the young warrior's spiritual defenses shattered. He was blasted backward across the battlefield and ejected from the arena, defeated by the Demon Clan genius's projection. "How can he be this strong?" his comrades gasped. A hush fell over the human side. Even the seasoned veterans, making their debut in the ancient battlefield, felt their hearts drop at the sight. One by one, other human prodigies rushed forward to take up the challenge. But their fates were identical. None lasted more than 2 or 3 rounds before being hurled out of the arena. "He isn't just at the Emperor realm," someone whispered in awe. "This projection is a true Emperor-level powerhouse, probably mid-Emperor at least." A wave of despair washed over the Huma, geniuses. The gulf in strength seemed insurmountable, until, with a sharp rush of air, a lone figure stepped onto the human demon stage. Ye Cheng, his dark hair swept back and eyes blazing with determination, surveyed the arena. The crowd fell silent. All eyes, human and demon alike, now watched him. When Ye Cheng strode onto the stage, a fresh wave of excitement rippled through the ranks of the human clan's young prodigies. Even the veteran clan masters watched with renewed anticipation, eyes shining. "He's here. He's finally making his move," someone whispered, and the murmur spread like wildfire. Chapter 176. Humanity's greatest champions waited with bated breath. From the opposite side of the arena, a new prodigy strode onto the stage, Jun Wanian, the first true wonderkind of the younger generation across the 3,000 realms. At the sight of his name, even the battle-hardened veterans in the stands stirred with excitement. Is he really that strong? Ye Cheng leaned toward Jian Rushuang, curiosity shining in his eyes as they both watched Junwanian square off against the 100th ranked demon. Jian Rushuang inclined his head, respect and a trace of awe on his face. Your Highness, Junwanian's talent is unrivaled among his peers. At just 27 years old, he's already perfected the Xuanhuang stage of cultivation. 3 years ago, he faced down an early-stage Tianhuang elder from his own sect and emerged victorious. Since then, his power has only grown. Ye Cheng nodded, anticipation fluttering in his chest. The clash between Junwanian and the 100th ranked demon was about to begin, and with it, the arena fell into a tense, expectant silence. I'm afraid ordinary mid-stage Tianhuang elders wouldn't stand a chance against him, Jian Rushuang said, her voice sober. She'd just broken through to the great success of the Earth Sword, but Junwanian's strength still eclipsed hers. Then again, he had long since reached Xuanhuang perfection and was nearly 30, 6 or 7 cultivation years ahead of her. With her talent, she had no doubt she would surpass him by the time she reached his age. At her side, Ye Cheng listened quietly. She stole a glance at him. His dark eyes were calm, his white robes brighter than new-fallen snow, his bearing effortlessly noble. More than just handsome, there was something about him that set her heart racing. Who else in the world could occupy her thoughts like His Highness? Caught up in the moment, her gaze drifted away. Ye Cheng noticed and offered her a gentle smile. Rushuang, are you all right? Ye Cheng couldn't help but glance over at her. Oh man. Jian Rushuang realized she'd betrayed her worry. Flushing slightly, she averted her eyes, then hurriedly changed the subject. I was just wondering, does Junwanian really have a chance against the 100th ranked demon? A burly Taoist with a tangled beard, standing beside Ye Cheng, snorted in amusement. A chance? He laughed, sweeping his gaze toward the arena. That's Junwanian you're talking about, the #1 prodigy of the 3,000 realms. How could he possibly lose to a mere 100th ranked demon? He stroked his beard, eyes bright with excitement. With Jun's power, even a mid-stage emperor-level demon would fall before him. A rank 100 demon is nothing but a speed bump. At his confident declaration, the human cultivators gathered around the human-demon platform exchanged quick glances. Whispers spread through the crowd until someone finally recognized the bearded man. That's the Lanke Saint Emperor. He's the one speaking? If the Lanke Saint Emperor himself endorses Junwanian, then our champion's victory is as good as sealed. Exactly. There's nothing to worry about. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Our human race's genius can finally be proud of himself. Jian Rushuang's brow shot up in surprise. He'd never guessed that this disheveled Taoist priest was so well connected. Not only was he from the same Kushuan Dao sect as Junwanian, he even held the rank of outer sect elder. When he spoke, his words carried undeniable authority, but Ye Cheng, standing quietly at his side, merely shook his head. He turned to Junwanian with a faint look of regret and murmured, "It's a pity. Junwanian's cultivation and talent are impressive, but he still falls short of winning." There was genuine disappointment in Ye Cheng's eyes. As a member of the human race, he wanted their own prodigy to claim victory. Yet the truth was impossible to ignore. The heavenly demon clan's inborn advantages were simply too great. Junwanian might be a 1 in a million talent, or even 1 in 10 million, but those rare demons who had broken through to the human demon stage were forged from tens, even hundreds of millions of their kin. They were living legends of ferocity and power, creatures few in the human world could hope to rival. Ye Cheng watched coolly as the transformed heavenly demon across the arena powered up, its aura surging with feral intensity. Even ranked 100th, that demon's strength is nothing to scoff at, he said under his breath. Judging by Junwanian's fight just now, he's reached the late heavenly queen tier. But Jun's own cultivation only ranks him among the mid to upper heavenly emperors. That slight edge is more than enough to decide this match. A murmur ran through the crowd. Lan Ke, the Saint Emperor, bristled at Ye Cheng's confidence. "Don't spout nonsense, boy," he barked, glaring. Several other prodigies and veteran fighters shot Ye Cheng disapproving looks. None predicted Jun would stand the slightest chance until the battle resumed. The demon charged with a bone-rattling roar. Junwanian braced himself and met its first onslaught head-on. Sparks flew as their auras collided, and for a moment it seemed the demon might be staggered. But despite Jun's valiant defense, each thunderous blow chipped away at him. He parried and countered with over 30 refined moves, far more than most would manage, but the demon's power was relentless. With a final explosive strike, the demon shattered Jun's guard. Jun's projection cracked like glass, and the image of him was hurled from the ring. For a breathless instant, it hung in midair before dissolving into motes of light against the darkened stage. Silence fell over the arena. Then roars of triumph rose from the demon ranks. Ye Cheng's lips curved in a knowing smile. He had called it. This battle would indeed come down to even the smallest edge in strength. The morale of the human cultivators gathered before Longyuan Mountain had collapsed so completely it was almost tangible. Even Saint Emperor Lan Ke found himself staring in disbelief. Jun Wanian lay sprawled on the ground, knocked clear off the stage, while the 100th-ranked demon prodigy stood unmoving atop the human demon stage. Shock and dismay flooded Lan Ke's eyes. They had all known that royal demons, with the power to transform, were fearsome, and that only the very finest of their kind could mount the human demon stage. Still, no one had expected that even the 100th-ranked demon genius would prove strong enough to utterly shatter the #1 young talent of the 3,000 realms. Does this mean we need to dispatch our top 50 cultivators, those ranked on Nanshuan Divine Continent's Earth list, to stand a chance against this 100th genius? A human prodigy whispered, voice trembling. His heart sank further when he thought of Jian Rushuang. Even she, with strength sufficient to claim the 72nd spot on the Earth list, would be hopelessly outmatched. Jun Wanian's power far surpasses Jian Rushuang's. He's even broken into 57th place on the Earth list, yet he still can't win. Who then can? Only those ranked in the top 50 on the Earth list stand any chance. In other words, these heavenly demon clan prodigies have outstripped the 3,000 realms, and indeed the entire young generation of the Southern Shuan Divine Continent, by an unbridgeable margin. The sight of such disparity left everyone watching feeling a profound sense of despair. They really overestimate themselves, don't they? One demon genius scoffed. They actually believe they have a shot at victory? What a joke, another chimed in. I'm more curious how such feeble humans once dared to challenge us and even routed our demon army. Preposterous, a third sneered. Their laughter rang out over the human demon stage as Jun Wanian lay defeated at their feet, shafts of spectral light flickering across his battered form. Each mocking tone cut deeper than any blade. But when the youngest among them began belittling the heroes of the past, an older demon prodigy stepped forward, frowning. Enough, he said firmly. You juniors should not ridicule the deeds of old. Didn't your clan elders warn you that those matters are tangled in ancient secrets? The demon prodigy who had spoken hastily immediately bowed his head. Forgive me, Your Highness. It won't happen again. A sudden hush fell over the gathered geniuses of the heavenly demon clan. At their center stood a young demon whose presence outshone them all, like a brilliant star drawing the moon's light. Servants, including Yuya, attended him with the utmost reverence. He raised a hand, and the murmur of voices died away. His gaze swept across the human demon arena. A faint sneer curved his lips, and his eyes gleamed with cold resolve. I have come to this ancient battlefield for one purpose, to claim victory in the human-demon tournament. You all understand our mission here, do you not? Before him stood one of the clan's 10 great prodigies of this era, the 6th prince, Yuan Ye. Calmly, he inclined his head. We understand, Your Highness. We will see your orders fulfilled. The prince allowed himself a thin smile. With bows echoing through the arena, the demon geniuses readied themselves, every mind set on the clash to come. Ye Cheng watched as Yuan Ye's grin grew wider. From his vantage point at the edge of the human demon stage, he could see a swarm of 10 or so human prodigies, young geniuses whose silhouettes hovered in midair, poised to launch their counterattack. At Yuan Ye's barely perceptible gesture, a surge of obsidian energy rippled out across the platform. Why hesitate? Yuan Ye's voice was soft, almost amused, but every word carried the weight of a summons. Now, go forth. On cue, the projections of those human talents wavered like flickering candles in a gale. One after another, they lost their footing, pitching headlong off the stage and vanishing into the void below. A ruthless light danced in Yuanyu's eyes as he stepped forward, voice echoing across the silent arena. Today, I will shatter every human projection on this stage. From now on, it belongs not to them, but to my demon prodigies. At that moment, Ye Cheng clenched his fists. He had trained a lifetime for such a test, and despite the overwhelming odds, he refused to let the stage fall entirely into darkness. Drawing in a steadying breath, he summoned all the strength of his cultivation. Energy crackled around him like a living storm, illuminating his determined expression. The battle was far from over, and Ye Cheng was ready to fight for every inch of this sacred ground. Chapter 177. At 6th Prince Yuanyu's signal, every demon prodigy tensed for battle, their gazes fixed on the lone human left standing on the human-demon stage. A fierce grin spread across one young demon's face as he strode forward. "We'll start with the lowest-ranked human," he declared, eager to humiliate his opponent. The assembled human contenders had already witnessed disaster. First, Junwanian, the South's #1 prodigy, fell in defeat, dashed hopes that no one could bring themselves to challenge the demons any further. Whispers of retreat rippled through the crowd. If even Junwanian can't beat the 100th-ranked demon, what chance do we have? They were turning to leave when a stirring in the arena froze them in place. Climbing the steps onto the stage was the 96th-ranked human prodigy, Tian Beishuan. Word had traveled fast through the 3,000 realms that, 100,000 years ago, this very genius had once been the realm's unrivaled #1, and all at the tender age of 27. A hush fell over the spectators. Tian Beishuan's calm confidence alone was enough to remind them why the world still trembled at the sound of his name, and why, perhaps, hope for humanity was not yet lost. Back in his day, Tian Beishuan's cultivation had already soared to true emperor level, and he'd mastered the Earth Sword at the Great Success stage. Even by modern standards, that achievement would guarantee him the top spot across all of Nanxuan Divine Continent, leaving today's young prodigies trailing in his wake, a genuine hero among mortals. In time, Tian Beishuan would perfect the Tao, ascend to emperor, and eventually reach the Saint Emperor realm. The Taoist lineage he founded, the Tianshuan sword sect, remains famed throughout Nanxuan to this very day. But now, on the opposite side of the battle ring once guarded by Tian Beishuan, a dark silhouette appeared, an envoy of the demon clan. "A demon dares to challenge Elder Beishuan's ring?" murmured the onlookers in disbelief. Those who had been drifting away froze in their tracks at the edge of the human-demon arena. They halted, riveted by the presence of the demon prodigy, their expressions solemn and watchful. The newcomer paused at the foot of the stage, swept his gaze over the cultivators clustered around the ancient battlefield, and then climbed the steps to stand before them all. The moment the young prodigy from the demon clan felt the weight of every human cultivator's stare, his arrogance only swelled. "You humans are utterly pathetic," he sneered. "You couldn't even defeat Ling Chuan, who's ranked 100th, and he's the lowest on the list. What a disappointment." He turned his contemptuous gaze toward the wavering projection of the Northern Xuan Saint Emperor hovering before him. His voice dripped with derision. "So sit back and enjoy the show. One by one, my heavenly demon clan will drive your so-called champions off the human-demon stage. After all, they're only marginally better than you commoners." At his words, so full of pride and power, the horde of human cultivators seethed with indignation. But fury alone was useless. This demon prodigy may have been cocky, but his strength was undeniable. In a prior duel, he had squared off against the very projection left by the Northern Xuan Saint Emperor himself, and neither man had prevailed. Even now, that legendary image flickered and faded with the passage of time, a silent testament to their stalemate. And so, watching was all they could do. The projection of Saint Emperor Beishuan was visibly waning, its energy reserves nearly depleted. By contrast, the Tianmo clan's prodigy, bolstered by his extraordinary physique, showed no hint of fatigue. Seizing the moment, he redoubled his assault, bearing down on Beishuan's fading image. The assembled human champions, once roaring with righteous indignation, found themselves sinking into despair. Anger burnt bright in their hearts, but it was powerless against the overwhelming might of the Tianmo. Then, with a thunderous crack that echoed through the arena, Beishuan's projection finally collapsed. A single devastating punch from the Tianmo prodigy scattered it into fragments of light. Silence fell as every onlooker stared in stunned disbelief. All eyes now shifted to seat 96 on the grand stage. The illusion of the human prodigy vanished, and in its place appeared the victorious demon heir on the human demon stage, a cruel, triumphant smile curling his lips. His true form then descended from the platform, step by step dissolving into nothingness, yet not before he glared down at the thousands of humans below, his arrogance burning bright. "Announce the number," he snarled. A resonant voice echoed through the arena. 12. Silence swept over the crowd. Having witnessed the duels on the human-demon stage, everyone understood instantly. With Tian Beishuan's defeat, only 12 human prodigies remained on that fateful platform. An elder master of the old generation drew in a ragged breath. Grief and helplessness knotted in his chest. Fate had already dealt the humans a cruel blow, and it seemed there was no end in sight. No sooner had his sorrowful sigh echoed through the stands than another demon prodigy strode onto the stage, his presence crackling with latent power. His gaze fixed on the human ranked 93rd, Tian Beishuan's immediate predecessor. But unlike Tian Beishuan's brash confidence, this new challenger radiated an icy, calculated focus that sent a chill through every onlooker. Ye Cheng had once been a human prodigy with the raw potential to reach the Saint Emperor realm. In the ancient war, long before he could realize that destiny, he fought alongside the southern mysterious continent. Though only at the venerable level, he stood his ground against 3 royal demon venerables, buying time for humankind and saving an entire city from annihilation. His heroism cost him his life, his cultivation forever frozen at the Xuanzun stage. Now, that same heroic soul reappeared on the human demon stage, only to be mercilessly shattered by the prodigy of the heavenly demon clan. The projection collapsed, its light extinguished in an instant. 11. Before vanishing, the heavenly demon youth curled his lips into a cruel smile and spat out a single digit, just as his predecessor had done. A deathly hush fell over the human spectators. Their hearts sank to the pit of their stomachs. At first, they had treated the previous demon's boast, that he would eliminate every human prodigy on this stage, as idle talk. But now, with Ye Cheng's defeat, they realized the threat was all too real. The din of battle on the human-demon stage reached a fever pitch. One by one, demon clan prodigies thundered forward, driving human champions off the platform with resounding thuds. Every time the board's next human contender stepped up, the same cruel ritual repeated itself, crack, and another fallen name scrolled off the list. The crowd of human cultivators watched in growing despair. With each passing moment, the human roster grew thinner. When the 47th ranked prodigy fell, silenced by a savage strike, only one human remained, the 32nd ranked sage hero, Ye Cheng. Already pushed to the brink, he bore the exhaustion of single-handedly facing emperor-level adversaries. He had bested 5 sky demon emperors in succession, so completely that only their fading projections lingered on the stage as hollow mockeries of once great power. Now, Ye Cheng squared his shoulders, his breath ragged. Ahead of him stood wave after wave of demon warriors, each eager to humiliate the human clan for good. They believed they could claim every spot on the human-demon stage and consign humanity to shame. But even drained and outnumbered, Ye Cheng would not yield. As another adversary leapt forward, he tightened his grip on the sword at his hip and steeled himself for the next onslaught. The fate of his race, and the last name on the list, depended on this final stand. Chapter 178. Only Ye Cheng remains. A heavy silence settled over Longyuan Mountain. Every human cultivator, young and old, stood with clenched fists, eyes fixed on the lone figure at center stage. Ye Cheng, the Xianxia Xuan Emperor, was the last human prodigy left on the human-demon stage. Unease and sorrow flickered across their faces. This duel was more than a contest for heavenly Dao rewards. It had become a battle for honor, the pride of 2 warring races. If Ye Cheng fell again, and the human champions were driven from the stage, the morale of the entire human realm would shatter. Even Jian Rushuang couldn't hide her worry. She gripped the railing, her knuckles white, and stared anxiously at the stage where Ye Cheng stood alone. After what felt like an eternity, a faint rustle drifted across the platform. A tall figure emerged from the shadows of the Sky Demon clan, stepping onto the ramp that led to the center. He stopped opposite Ye Cheng, a cruel smile curving his lips as he met Ye Cheng's unflinching gaze. The final showdown was about to begin. The demon cultivator laughed, voice booming across the blood and iron platform. "Not bad for the last prodigy of the human race, ranked 32nd, he sneered. "But your descendants are utterly worthless. All they can do is watch as my demon clan drives you off this stage." With that, he sprang forward in a flash of movement, palms pressed together as a boundless tide of divine power gathered between them. In an instant, he became a living thunderbolt, hurtling straight at the shimmering projection of Qi Xiaoshuan Emperor. The air crackled and roared as white-hot lightning flooded the arena, swallowing the Emperor's image in a dazzling, blistering sea of thunder. Every human cultivator on the surrounding platforms felt their hearts clench. Time and again, the Demon Clan's ultimate killing technique had shattered even the greatest prodigies of humankind, and now the same fate threatened their Emperor's projection. Would Qi Xiaoshuan be any different? A collective gasp rose from the crowd as the thunderstorm's fury raged on. Onlookers exchanged terrified glances, every eye fixed on the wavering silhouette of their champion. In that heartbeat of silence before the final strike, hope and dread hung in the air, balanced on the edge of a blade. Amid a sky split by jagged lightning, a torrent of crimson flame coalesced into the shape of a colossal fire dragon. With a roar that shook the heavens, it tore the boiling sea of thunder in two. Standing astride the dragon's spirit-forged projection, Ye Cheng's eyes remained calm. Around him, his spiritual power swirled like a whirlwind. He raised a single hand and summoned a scarlet lotus from pure energy. Then another, until 9 blood-red blossoms hovered in a perfect circle before him. Each lotus bloomed in succession with explosive force, channeling its power straight into the phantom dragon beneath his feet. When the 9th lotus finally opened, the dragon's presence became overwhelming, as if an ancient, sky-conquering beast had truly awakened. At Ye Cheng's command, the fire dragon unleashed its might, sweeping across the human-demon battlefield with undeniable authority. Yet this astonishing display was not the end. It was only the beginning. Atop the swirling mists above Longyuan Mountain, Emperor Xiaoshuan's projection erupted in a blaze of scarlet flame. The roar of a 100-foot fire dragon filled the air as arcane energy spiraled around him. Between his fingers, seals shifted in a precise, almost musical sequence, each one a key to unlocking deeper power. Then, in a breathtaking instant, the colossal dragon collapsed inward, compressed into a palm-sized square talisman. Its surface gleamed with a single red seal, intricately carved with a coiled dragon, the legendary Qilong fire seal. Though its form had shrunk by more than 100-fold, its destructive might remained undiminished. The moment that tiny talisman materialized, every cultivator present, from those on the cusp of the human-demon stage, He Tianmo clan's most promising youths, felt an oppressive surge of energy that threatened to fracture their spirit. "By the heavens, it's the fire seal!" An elder gasped, voice trembling with awe. "This is the very technique that made Emperor Xiaoshuan feared across the realms." Standing nearby, Ye Cheng clenched the hilt of his sword, heart pounding. He had dreamed of mastering spells like these, and now he witnessed their true power. How could he have refined it so perfectly before ascending to venerable? Another cultivator whispered, eyes wide. Below them, on the human side of the border, joy and excitement swept through the crowd like wildfire. Shouts of triumph and relief broke free from lips long stifled by fear. Even the stoic clan elders, faces lined with years of hardship, allowed rare smiles to bloom. In that moment, the revival of the fire seal was more than a display of strength. It was a beacon of hope, a reminder that greatness could rise again from the ashes. Back then, the Heavenly Emperor had relied on the fire seal to slaughter countless Tianmo emperors of his own realm. Now, his projection crystallized into the Qilong fire seal, an embryonic form of the full-fledged Lihuo heavenly seal, yet one whose murderous power was already enough to chill the blood. As the venerable elder stood before them, explaining the fearsome technique in measured tones, the dozen or so young geniuses felt their hearts ignite. Their eyes shone with reverence and ambition. The Heavenly Emperor truly deserves the title Sage of Humanity. Even without having reached venerable status, he's achieved so much already. I can't help but be both awed and ashamed of my own weaknesses. Fists clenched, the human prodigies steeled themselves for combat, emboldened by the display of supreme power. In sharp contrast, the prodigy from the Sky Demon clan, though undefeated thus far, found his confidence ebbing away in the presence of the Qilong Fire Seal. His aura flickered, and his eyes grew haunted, betraying a fear he could barely contain. When the battle finally erupted, it confirmed every whisper and suspicion among the onlookers. The incomplete Qilong Fire Seal was more than a mere projection of power. It was a harbinger of annihilation. Under Ye Cheng's relentless Qilong Fire Seal, the Sky Demon clan's prodigy had been driven back, blow by blow, until he was finally struck by the Xiaoxuan Emperor's projected aura and swallowed by an endless sea of flame. It seemed his defeat was absolute. Victory. At the sight of the inferno devouring everything in its path, every human genius gathered around the arena burst into cheers. Even the oldest masters allowed themselves bright, triumphant smiles. But before their jubilation could peak, a single, disdainful voice rang out. Victory? Is that what you call it? Don't celebrate so soon. From the very heart of the blazing inferno, the Sky Demon prodigy rose. Though his robes were torn and scorched, his breathing remained steady, his posture utterly composed. Not a serious wound marred his body. All traces of injury and collapse had been nothing more than an illusion. He swept the astonished crowd with a mocking grin and called out, "How's that for a finale?" Ye Cheng, a proud prodigy of the Heavenly Demon clan, surveyed the holographic displays on the human demon stage with cold satisfaction. Around him, human cultivators bristled with anger and grief as they watched his every move. Without a word, Ye Cheng's figure blurred like a specter. In an instant, he reappeared directly before the towering projection of the Red Sky Emperor, humanity's last bastion of hope. Then, with ruthless precision, he lashed out. Crack! The sickening sound of shattering energy echoed through the arena as the Red Sky Emperor's image exploded into fragments. A shocked silence fell over the human spectators, their faces draining of color at the brutal, decisive blow. Ye Cheng threw back his head and laughed, the sound ringing off the stone walls. "How do you like that, pathetic humans?" he jeered. "Isn't it clear now? Your race is weak, and the day the demons reclaim this world isn't far off. Remember that." Along the sidelines of the stage, noble scions of the demon clans roared their approval. Their cheers erupted into a chorus of exultation, certain that with this victory, the inevitable triumph of the demon race drew ever nearer. None were surprised when the royal clan's prodigy, Ye Cheng, shattered the 32nd Red Sky Emperor's projection. After all, he was the lone standout among this generation of demon nobles, and yet he wasn't one of the 10 princes. Born of a rare, natural fusion of multiple demon lineages, Ye Cheng lacked the customary protection of the royal elders, which kept him off the official roster. His power, however, rivaled, and on many counts exceeded, that of any prince. Today he'd even dominated the entire human demon stage. For every young talent in the Heavenly Demon clan, that was a triumph to celebrate. They all turned their eyes upward to the arena, now empty of human simulacra. 6th Prince Xianxia, commander of the demonstration squad, could barely hide his delight. He made his way over to the last transformed demon who had fought, slapped him firmly on the shoulder, and lavished him with praise. Just as the cheers reached their peak, a voice cut through the excitement. A royal demon, eyes wide with astonishment, exclaimed aloud, and in an instant every gaze snapped back to him. "Huh? Does anyone else dare to challenge the human demon stage?" At that, every member of the Heavenly Demons Assembly turned their gaze upward toward the elevated platform. And there, quietly, almost imperceptibly, Ye Cheng's figure appeared on the stage. Chapter 179. Huh? Someone actually still dares to challenge the human demon stage? At Xianxia's words, the Tianjiao of the Immortal Demon clan narrowed their eyes, casting hostile glares at Ye Cheng as he appeared on the raised dais. Below Longyuan Mountain, the human realm's prodigies and powerful elders were equally stunned. Only moments ago, even the projection of Emperor Qi Xiaoxuan had been defeated, leaving the younger generation of human cultivators reeling with despair. Who in their right mind would still step forward under such circumstances? Yet here was Ye Cheng, calmly awaiting his opponent. Recognition flickered across the crowd's faces. Isn't that the man who claimed Junwanian was no match for him? Does he really think he's stronger than Junwanian? Well, if he believes Junwanian can't beat him, maybe he actually does have the power to back it up. After witnessing defeat after defeat, the human cultivators were teetering on the brink of hopelessness. Now watching Ye Cheng mount the stage with unwavering confidence, a fresh wave of unease washed over them. Though they knew deep down that this unknown sword cultivator stood little chance against the demons, everyone still rooted for him with all their hearts. Even the Lan Ke Saint Emperor, brother in sect to Junwanian, clenched his fists, eyes fixed on Ye Cheng's back, betraying a spark of hope he could hardly conceal. In the audience, Jianru Shuang's beautiful eyes shone with admiration. She, too, bristled at the demon's arrogance, her blood boiling, but she understood that if she herself stepped onto the human demon stage, her inexperience would only bring disgrace. Ye Cheng was different. If he makes a move, she whispered under her breath, even if he can't win, he might at least carve his way into the top 50. Beside her, Yunxi and his younger sister balled their tiny fists, faces alight with excitement. "Daddy, you've got this!" the boy called out. "Knock all those demons off the stage!" Their innocent cheers echoed through the hall, carrying the fervent wish that Ye Cheng would turn the tide of battle and prove that human hearts still dared to defy darkness. Several human cultivators in the stands couldn't help stealing glances at the two youngsters. Yunxi and his sister, with their radiant, almost ethereal beauty, he like polished gold, she like pure jade, looked more like delicate porcelain dolls than battle-ready opponents. The crowd was impressed, but when the siblings boldly declared they would knock every last demon off the stages, the onlookers simply shook their heads and smiled wryly. Kids and their empty boasts, they thought. Just as murmurs of amusement began to swell, a calm voice cut through the chatter. "Very well, let Daddy handle them all." All eyes swiveled to Ye Cheng. He offered Yunxi and his sister a confident smile, then vanished in a flash. In the next instant, he stood squarely on the 100th battleground, the legendary human demon stage. The arena was arranged just as it had been for every challenger before him. Tiers of human cultivators ringed the platform, and below, a gathering of demons and alien prodigies eyed him with calculated curiosity and barely restrained pride. Ye Cheng's lips curved into a frosty grin as he surveyed his opponents. "I originally intended only to clear the first 31 stages," he announced, his voice carrying effortlessly across the hushed amphitheater. "But I've changed my mind." Ye Cheng didn't hesitate. He drew his sword in a single, fluid motion and unleashed a strike straight at the royal demon genius, guarding the 100th human demon stage. This very demon had once defeated Junwanian, the foremost prodigy of the human race across the 3,000 realms. Yet in Ye Cheng's steady gaze, there was not a flicker of fear. His blade cut through the air with effortless precision, its light cool and unassuming, as though slicing through mist rather than challenging a storied warrior. Spectators from both sides fell silent in shock. Demon Clan elites who had witnessed uncountable battles exchanged uneasy glances. On the human side, cultivators whispered in disbelief. "He's too arrogant," someone murmured. Another shook his head. "Does he even understand who he's facing?" Not far away, atop Longyuan Mountain, more human cultivators were still arriving. Many had missed the earlier confrontations but had learned of the dire situation en route. Their faces bore equal parts sorrow and anger. They had seen their greatest champions fall, their cities overrun. Yet a single spark of hope drove them onward. Perhaps there remained a genius among the human ranks, capable of turning the tide. Among these latecomers was the contingent from Yuhang Imperial Palace. The Ying siblings stood together, their expressions tense but determined. Sheng Jiling's eyes narrowed, every muscle coiled for action. Beside him, Nalan Qingyuan pressed forward through the crowd, desperate for a glimpse of the battle that might save their race. All of them awaited the outcome of Ye Cheng's daring strike, praying it would rekindle hope for humanity. When Ye Cheng unleashed his technique, the reaction was universal: disappointment. From the young masters perched along the imperial palace's peaks, the Ying siblings among them, to the veteran elders and renowned fighters lining the arena, every face fell. Ye Cheng had masked his features with a powerful disguise art, and aside from Jian Rushuang and Yun Shi, no one recognized him. Even Ying Yuner and Ying Shen, along with Sheng Jiling, shook their heads in dismay. What is this Taoist brother doing? Is he deliberately throwing the match? One elder whispered. His opponent might have been only the 100th ranked royal demon, but that title still marked him as a fearsome adversary. One who, rumor had it, had nearly bested Jun Wanian, the foremost genius of the 3,000 realms. To underestimate such a foe was sheer folly. Several of the Yuhang Imperial Palace elders even began moving forward, intent on pulling the novices from the ring rather than watch them suffer a needless defeat. Then a clear, urgent voice cut through their murmurs. No, this isn't over yet. There's still hope. It was Nalan Qingyuan, his eyes bright with conviction. At his cry, every head turned, all attention snapping back to the arena, waiting to see what would happen next. Everyone's attention snapped toward the demon stage atop Longyuan Mountain. The Ying siblings exchanged astonished looks. Taoist Qingyuan, one of them blurted. Where did you get that? Are you seeing things, Qingyuan? Another added, worry creasing their brows. A few concerned elders from the Nalan clan leaned in, voices low, but it was Sheng Jiling who followed Qingyuan's fixed gaze and realized the truth. She shivered, her heart thundering, as a strange light shone in her eyes. No, Qingyuan's right, she whispered. At once, the Yuhang Imperial Palace delegates murmured in confusion. What's going on here? They asked one another, utterly baffled. Shaking off their own surprise, the Ying siblings lifted their eyes to the stage. There, Jian Rushuang and Yun Shi stood ready, fists clenched, anticipation gleaming in their faces, and then it clicked. That means Taoist Gu has entered the battle, one of the Ying siblings breathed. If it's Ye Cheng, another replied, then no one can predict the outcome. Indeed, everyone, even those unfamiliar with him, knew of Ye Cheng's extraordinary strength. With him now taking the field, the duel's final result hung in the balance. Whether it was Sheng Jiling, Nalan Qingyuan, or even the Ying family's elder siblings, everyone watching had reached roughly the same conclusion. Ye Cheng possessed real talent. They wouldn't dare proclaim him certain to win, but beating a 100th rank royal demon? It was not beyond the realm of possibility. Their confident, almost eager expressions did not go unnoticed by the elders of the Yuhang Imperial Palace. Around them, other cultivators overheard the whispers and fanned out along the arena, its edge, curiosity, and tension burning in their eyes. Even so, most people still found it hard to believe that Ye Cheng's casual, almost easygoing posture could carry him to victory. On the opposite side of the human-demon stage, the Tianmo clan's young prodigies exchanged scornful looks. They simply could not imagine a human of any caliber standing toe-to-toe with their fiercest demon. One sneer rippled through their ranks. How dare he be so arrogant? He's courting his own death. Beneath the elevated arena, Yuya stood close to her friend Yuan Ye. She had trained alongside the demon clans for years and held a deep-seated contempt for humans. Her dark eyes flicked toward Ye Cheng, blazing with derision. Then she turned to Zimei, another demon maiden who had publicly claimed that a human genius might actually defeat her royal demon. Still clinging to your delusion, Zimei? Yuya taunted, her voice loud enough for half the crowd to hear. You actually think some human boy can slay my royal demon? What a fairy tale. Zimei's face hardened, but she held her ground. Around them, the audience grew still. The gossamer barrier of the stage shimmered, waiting for a spark to ignite the contest. Ye Cheng's slight figure, so unassuming just moments ago, stood alone against the most dreaded foe in all the season's matches. Every eye in the arena focused on him now, some in hopeful admiration, many in cynical doubt. The air crackled with anticipation as the boundary between human and demon became the world's stage. Many of the demon clan's prodigies exchanged uneasy glances as they recalled the report Zimei had delivered not long ago. Even Zimei's face had turned sullen. She fixed her gaze on the human-demon stage, doubts churning in her mind. This unassuming swordsman before her, could he really be the same young genius she'd met earlier? His casual posture, the faint half-smile on his lips, all of it ran counter to her expectations. Had she misjudged him? Was it all a misunderstanding? As Zime hesitated, a few nearby demons picked up on her uncertainty and began to jeer. Their laughter echoed across the arena until a sudden bang silenced them. A low, hoarse voice rumbled through the crowd. "It seems the victor has already been decided." At that pronouncement, the demons fell quiet. They turned back toward the stage, eager to behold the human swordsman's defeat, only to have their contempt vanish in an instant. Their eyes flew wide open as they took in what was unfolding before them. "How can this be?" a voice echoed. Beneath the demons' stunned gazes, the projection of the royal demon, who had reigned as the foremost genius of the 3,000 realms for 10,000 years, fractured like glass at Ye Cheng's casual sword slash. Cracks spider-webbed across the illusion, and then it shattered in a thunderous blast. A deathly silence descended. Heavenly demon prodigies and countless human cultivators alike stood frozen, their thoughts scattered. At last, Ye Cheng's cold voice cut through the stillness. 99. He spoke quietly, yet every ear caught the words. He did not accept the reward for reaching the 100th human demon platform, nor did he leave his own projection there. The platform remained eerily vacant. Then, under a sea of incredulous eyes, he sheathed his sword, took a steadying breath, and calmly stepped onto the 99th platform. The sword's light flared once more, bathing the entire human-demon platform in a deadly, murderous glow. Chapter 180. Silence settled over the ancient battlefield, hanging heavy above the row of human-demon arenas. Every cultivator, whether of the heavenly demon clan or the human factions, stood breathless, their gazes fixed on the lone swordsman in white as he strode onto the platforms. Excitement crackled through the crowd like wildfire. With a single, fluid motion, Ye Cheng cut down the warrior on the 99th platform, then the 98th, then the 97th. One by one he advanced, his blade striking fast and true. By the time he reached the 50th arena, 50 of the clan's royal prodigies, fighters whose names were etched into demonkind's history, lay shattered. Each had met his end in the space of a heartbeat, unable even to parry a single blow, their bodies hurled from the platform like broken dolls. Behind Ye Cheng, an unbroken line of empty stages stretched back to the first. The demons who had once mocked this human interloper now stared in grim awe. Their derision had curdled into solemn shock, and from shock it grew into a fierce, burning fury. Yet there was nothing any of them could do but watch as the white-clad swordsman pressed forward, unstoppable. The air hung heavy with a mixture of shock and fury, so tangled that not even those who felt it could say which emotion burned hotter. All eyes turned to the vacant human-demon platform behind Ye Cheng. Though it stood empty, and Ye Cheng had taken no effort to leave a spectral copy of himself, the rules were unyielding. Whenever a challenger vanquishes the platform's guardian without entrusting it with a projection, the stage automatically materializes a replacement. This new sentinel draws its power from the last victor. In this case, Ye Cheng, though capped at roughly 60% of his true strength. Even at just 60%, it was enough to cow every would-be contestant into silence. No Tianmo clan prodigy dared step forward to face a phantom bearing more than half of Ye Cheng's daunting power. Faces twisted in disbelief and resentment, the demon clan's finest could only seethe in stunned outrage. "How can a mere human be this powerful?" they whispered, their voices trembling with a blend of desperation and awe. Earlier, the Tianmo clan had belittled the human clan's prodigy, but now Ye Cheng was about to turn the tables. He stood on the human-demon arena with quiet confidence and called out, "Don't worry." Above him, the night sky swirled with stars, and clustered before the stage were the Tianmo clan's elite warriors. At their head stood 6th Prince Xianxia, leader of the team. His face was composed, but the barely contained menace in his eyes betrayed his true intent. He spoke in a low, measured tone. "Did you notice something?" His movements have slowed. A ripple of surprise spread through the Tianmo geniuses. "Has he?" they murmured, exchanging glances. All eyes turned back to Ye Cheng, who radiated an almost crushing pressure. Despite that immense aura, a shared thrill ignited among the spectators. Yoya was the first to break the silence. Her eyes shone with excitement as she nodded. "Yes, it's true." In that charged moment, the contest hung on a knife's edge. The Tianmo warriors readied themselves, while Ye Cheng stood poised, every muscle taut and alert. Whatever happened next, neither side would back down. Yueya's report crackled through the projection room of the Tianmo clan. After that human sword cultivator shot up to the 50th rank, he cut down the 49th swordsman with only 3 strikes. When he faced my projection at 47, it still took him 5 sword thrusts to win. And by the time he reached the 40th spot, he needed 10 sword slashes before he could claim victory. She leapt from her seat, her eyes shining with triumph. He's far from invincible. I'd put him on the same level as the human race's former prodigy, Xiao. Maybe a bit stronger, but not by much. Her words electrified the assembled geniuses of the Tianmo clan. Gasps and excited whispers rippled through the chamber. At the same moment, on the human side of the demon-human arenas carved into Longyuan Mountain and other sacred grounds, countless cultivators watched the live projections of Ye Cheng. Each time he slew another opponent and rose in rank, their faces grew more anxious. "Can he really sustain this pace?" they murmured. High atop Longyuan Mountain itself, Nalan Qingyuan, Sheng Jiling, and the other human champions stood side by side. Each clenched fist tightened as they followed Ye Cheng's progress on the distant plateau. Their hearts weighed heavy with worry. He had already pushed so far, and the battles only grew fiercer with every step. Even Zhan Rushuang's heart thumped in his chest, but there was no denying that Yuya's warning was coming true. The tide was turning decisively against humanity and against Ye Cheng. By the time Ye Cheng reached the 36th battle platform, he had already expended 13 swords of heaven. 4 platforms later, at the 32nd, he unleashed 15 more, and when he finally arrived at the 21st platform, he poured out the last of his strength, 30 swords in a single blinding salvo, to claim another victory. Win. A cheer went up from the human side, but across the field, the geniuses of the Tianmo clan merely exchanged relieved glances. Yes, Ye Cheng had single-handedly cleared 80 of the 100 human demon platforms. Yes, his blade had fallen relentlessly. But everyone watching could see the toll it had taken. Each strike had drained him, each victory hammered at his reserves. He was pushing himself to the brink of collapse. And then there was the matter of reward. There were 100 platforms in all, but the real treasures lay at the front. The closer one fought to the beginning, the richer the spoils, refined demonic steels, heaps of gold, even fragments of ancient relics. Ye Cheng's 80 conquered platforms were impressive, but what did they mean if the final 20, the ones worth the most, remained unconquered? In blunt terms, he was running out of time, out of energy, and out of chances. The Tianmo geniuses allowed themselves faint smiles. It was only a matter of moments before they sent their own champion forward, an opponent fresh and brimming with power, to finish what Ye Cheng could no longer sustain. A hush fell over the arena. Steam rose from the ground as the next challenger stepped into the circle of battle lights. Even the air seemed to shudder in anticipation. Ye Cheng straightened his shoulders and tightened his grip on the hilt of his last sword. He had come too far to falter now. Eloquently, his eyes met those of his new adversary. "Let's finish this," he murmured, voice low but resolute. And with that, the final confrontation began. A tall, pale-faced genius of the Tianmo clan spoke up, his tone icy with conviction. "Even if the humans seize 99 of the 100 devil human platforms," he declared, "so long as the first platform remains in our hands, we'll have all we need to keep the human race crushed beneath us." A ripple of agreement passed through the assembled demons. 6th Prince Xianxia gave a slight nod, then turned to Zimei, still smarting from her recent defeat at a human's hands, and offered her a gentle, reassuring smile. "Zimei, don't be so hard on yourself," he said quietly. "Clearly the humans have talents among them. Losing one match isn't your fault." At Xianxia's words, more voices echoed in agreement. After all, the human who'd bested Zimei, Ye Cheng, had exhibited astonishing power. If he were to appear on the stage again, any of them might fall before him just as easily. It was only a matter of time before the clan's masters decided he had to be dealt with, permanently. Zimei forced a weary smile at Xianxia's encouragement, though her heart still throbbed with the sting of humiliation. She lifted her eyes to the great devil-human stage, its carved runes blazing in crimson and gold, the ancient mechanism at its center churning and creaking under some unseen strain. There, Ye Cheng stood alone, every sinew taut, sweat beading on his brow as he battled whatever force sought to hold him down. It looked as though Ye Cheng was about to fall. Zime's heart pounded with unease. She couldn't shake the certainty that his true strength hadn't yet emerged. "Zime, what's the matter with you?" Yuya snapped from nearby, her voice dripping with thinly veiled contempt. "The sixth prince has been nothing but kind to you, and this is how you repay him." Zime barely heard her. She was still reeling from what she'd just witnessed. Not only had her carefully laid trap backfired, but her target, a human sword cultivator, had turned the tide in a blink, making her look the fool. Prideful Yuya, long convinced of her own superiority, could hardly swallow the humiliation. With a mocking tilt of her head, she sneered, "Or do you still believe this human swordsman can keep fighting?" At her words, the surrounding demon prodigies exchanged uneasy glances. Their confidence wavered as they watched Ye Cheng stand firm, the faintest trace of a smile playing at the corner of his lips. Zime opened her mouth as if to protest, to warn them not to underestimate Ye Cheng, but she caught herself and fell silent. In this situation, who would believe her? She forced a bitter smile, let out a soft sigh, and refused to say more. Still, her eyes gave everything away, fueling the fury simmering among the demon clan prodigies. Then, crack! From the human-demon arena came the sound of another demon projection shattering. Voices rose in shocked whispers. "He isn't defeated yet? The human still stands?" The demon prodigies went pale for a heartbeat, then visibly relaxed. Yes, Ye Cheng had scraped his way into the top 20, but it had been a brutal ordeal. He'd spent nearly 50 rounds locked in combat, with the projection ranked 20th, before finally driving it off the stage. Exhausted and breathless, he went straight into his next match against the 11th-ranked Guardian, and nearly fell. Only at the very last moment did he snatch victory, felling his opponent just as darkness threatened to overtake him.